Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Super Bowl 58 Radio Row, broadcasting live from Radio Row in Las Vegas, presented by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So we got a big one to start the show. Last night, Will Levis, Titans quarterback, was participating in a ping-pong battle here in Las Vegas on behalf of Procter & Gamble. And I was able to catch up with the Titans quarterback after the event last night. And let's get right into it. This was my conversation last night with Titans quarterback Will Levis. So let's start here. Take me through kind of what it's been like for the last year of the draft, the process, what happened with the draft, going to the Titans, becoming the starter, the injuries. What did that feel like as you reflect back on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely times where, especially on that draft night, where there were moments where, I kind of was thinking to myself, like, why is this all happening to me? Why? But, at the end of the day, I realized that everything that did happen to me was for a reason, and that I ended up where I needed to be. And, the season, it was a weird season in terms of when I did get the opportunity to play and, stepping in, like, kind of in that midway point of the season and figuring it out and adjusting as the year goes on. But, I'm proud of myself and how I handled it, and just looking forward to building on it and improving for next year.
What was it like mentally going from a third-string rookie quarterback to a starting NFL quarterback?
I think that I did a good job before I became the starter of kind of putting myself in the mentality of that I was the starter, even though I wasn't. I think that's important for guys, to make sure that their preparation and everything would equal what their preparation would be if they were in a bigger role, and so that when they do get the role that they're ready. So, I mean, I was proud of how I handled myself before then and how I prepared, and I feel like it set me up for more success.
Take me through your feelings there at the end of the season. You're getting peppered about all the questions about Mike Vrabel's job. You're answering them. The Titans end up making a change. Just what were those feelings like as that all played out, and maybe the conversations you had with them, and then where you ended up here right now?
Yeah, it's weird. You have no say as a player. You really don't know. A lot of the times you're figuring stuff out on social media before you hear from anybody else. So it's tough, and to know that you really have no say and you really have no idea how things are going, and when the decision was made, obviously, there's mixed feelings about it all, but we know that our ownership and our organization has a plan for us going forward, and we're buying in to what they're doing, and I'm pumped about the new staff. And once we iron all the rest of the staff out, I'm excited to get to know everybody and get to work.
What'd you make of the fact that when Amy did announce to the fans why she made the move she made, she brought up the things to be positive about, and she said, "We've got a young quarterback." And it almost felt like that was kind of a commitment from the owner to the fans of, hey, this is my quarterback right here. What did you make of that?
I mean, it means the world. It gives me confidence, and it gives me clarity, and her view, in me, and it gives me motivation to just work that much harder so that I can keep that job.
What does the offseason look like for you? We don't even know who's going to be on the team next year, who's not going to be on the team next year. I get the vibe from you that you're the kind of guy who, when you're bored, you're mad that you're not working at football or whatever. So kind of what's the plan in terms of making sure that instead of training for a draft or anything like that, that you are really focused on getting better for the start of next season? Yeah,
I'm definitely like that. I'm a workaholic. I'm gonna work myself into the ground, but right now, I'm not, and I'm enjoying myself for the first time in a really long time, which has been incredible, and letting my body get back, and and here in a week's time or so, we'll hit the ground running again with training. But it's been a blessing to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit, these past few weeks. But as we figure out what the roster looks like, who there's going to be, I'm going to do whatever I can to get with as many guys as I need to, wherever they may be. I'll be, for the most part, in Nashville, so, getting to learn from the new staff and all that. But, doing whatever I can as a leader to, get everyone else ready.
What's the conversation's been like with Coach Callahan so far? What's the vibe?
It's been great. I mean, I was only able to briefly talk to him a couple times when he first got in the building, and then I actually spoke with him on the phone today. But he's keeping me in the loop with the hires that we're making and how excited he is about the different people that we have in the building. And I just can't wait to start getting with him in a classroom environment and start hammering down this playbook.
Did the game slow down from you for when you first? I mean, I know the first game was so you were so good in that first game, but did it slow down in terms of like how fast it went, or the mental processing for you slowed down a little bit as the season went on? And is that something that maybe you feel like as you go into the second year you can take advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. I think that even from the first game, I really did feel like I had a good feel and sense of the space on the field and where guys were at, and that just only grew as the season went on, and I was able to put the ball in the right spots for the most part, and obviously some bad throws here and there and decisions that I'd like to get back, but I know that I'm only going to improve with time, and with more reps under my belt, the game's just going to become easier and easier to me.
Do you look back at I get the vibe also that you probably look back at the mistakes and think, oh, if I had hit Traylon Burks on that throw, or oh, if I had looked at this guy in the Pittsburgh game, or oh, this would have. How do you kind of look at that and say, okay, next time that happens, I will make the right decision here?
I think honestly one of my strengths is I don't think watching tape from week to week, like it was rare that I caught myself making the same mistake twice, like 2 weeks in a row or something like that. So I really do like take coaching well, I think, and that I'm able to understand that making a mistake for the first time, like that's going to happen to any player, but it becomes more on you when it happens the second time. So I take pride in that, and but it's important to not beat yourself too up about those plays, because I know that I have the ability to make all the plays that I didn't.
What was it like experiencing the Atlanta game? Because I would like to think I'm pretty confident in myself, but there are still times of doubt, like, oh, can I do this at this level? And then for you playing quarterback in the NFL, it's like the number one job in America, and it's like, can I do this at this level? And then you have the Atlanta game. What was that like?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I always felt confident in myself, just especially through the reps that I was able to get in practice and training camp, that I could do it. But you never know. I mean, sometimes like you go out there and it just might not click for you. And I was just glad that it did. And the coaches set us up for success that game, and guys were out just making plays, and everything just felt like it was working for us. And it was a great game for me to have to give me confidence going forward for the rest of the year.
So I talked to Coach Stoops last year. And I said, I used to do radio in Louisville, and I was talking to Coach Stoops, and I said, Coach, tell me about like Will Levis and what everybody, because there's kind of this idea of Will Levis, and then I talked to some other people, and they're like, no, Will Levis is everything. And he goes, it's not about money, it's not about fame, he said it's about winning. And he gave me this like kind of stern look. I'm sure you probably know the look I'm talking about, but he was like, he said that the season that you had in 2022 that he took personally, when you think about that, about how, he's not your coach anymore. He doesn't owe anything to you. You don't owe anything to him. What does that kind of, when you think of that, what does it mean to you?
It means that I felt like I did a good job as a player under him, and that I at least did enough to earn his respect. And, I have all the respect in the world for Coach Stoops, and knowing that he's going to bat for me, I know I'm going to go to bat for him for the rest of my career as well. And, he's a guy who's, he speaks the truth, and he's not going to, BS you in that sense. So, I hope that was a authentic answer from him, but I think that I'd agree with it as well.
So when Brian Callahan got hired, I sat down with him the next day. And I said, when you were in Cincinnati, you guys had the 5th pick in the 21 draft. And there was a big discussion about, do you take the receiver, who's a really, really good receiver, or do you take the tackle, who's a really, really good tackle? And he said it was a really big, discussion they had there, but he talked about how Peyton Manning kind of would prefer the receiver. And he said, I want the premium touchdown scorers over the premium knockdown scorers. Line or a premium receiver touchdown scoring option in your head that you're like, that's what I want?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you brought that up, because it is a kind of similar situation. But no, I mean, they're the ones in the office that make the decisions on those things, and I'm staying out of it, and I trust that whatever they decide is going to be best for us.
Brock Bowers said today he wants to be a Titan. I asked him what he thought about you, and he said, oh, I played against him in college. He's balling. That earned some brownie points?
No, I mean, he's balling too. He's been incredible to watch these past couple of years, and I hope that he ends up in the spot that's meant to be for him, and if that's Tennessee, then that's awesome.
Well, last one for you. This year, again, a lot has been said about you, a lot has been, thought about you, whether it's positive or negative. but the way that the Tennessee fans kind of embraced, I'm not talking about Vols, but I'm talking about Titans, the way that those fans kind of embraced you there after the Atlanta game, what did you make of that? Did you feel it? Like, what was that like?
I mean, I definitely felt it, and it just makes you want to work harder because, the second that you have a game on the converse side of that one, you know that they're going to be coming for you, and that's okay, and that's what fans are entitled to do, and I'm just trying to do the best I can to make them proud and to make them happy each and every Sunday, Thursday, or Monday.
Oh, I actually lied. I got one more for you. Any of the games this season that you didn't get, is there one that sticks in your craw that you'd like to have back?
Oh, I'd say Steelers. I mean, that last throw on the end of the game, that Thursday night game. I mean, we should have had that game won, and that would have been a good one to win.
Will, thanks, man.
Thank you.
There you go. That was Titans quarterback Will Levis with us yesterday. And again, I thought he was incredibly politically correct, which it was funny when I asked him the question about the receiver or the tackle. He kind of looked at me like his eyes kind of lit up. He was like, yeah, it's really interesting you say that because they had that, but yeah, I trust the front office. And I was like, damn, I really wanted to know if he was going to give me an idea one way or another. I do have one big takeaway, though, that I do think is pretty obvious in what he said. He said it, then he kind of went back to being politically correct. We'll get to that next. And your reaction, what you heard from Will Levis as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Again, 615-737-1025. We will have that podcast up. If you missed any of it, want to listen to it again, we will have that podcasted shortly here on Stillman and Company. But your reaction to the Will Levis interview and mine, that's next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller's great. I love them. They take great care of my home. They have done that for 6 years now, and they can do the exact same for you. So let Hiller do that. It's Valentine's season, and love is in the air. So find your perfect match this month with Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems, and get a free whole home surge protection when you buy a new whole home generator. Or get 50% off a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater. You'll never be more in love with your home. Find your perfect match at happyhiller.com. Those are my guys. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Take me through your feelings there at the end of the season. You're getting peppered about all the questions about Mike Vrabel's job. You're answering them. The Titans end up making a change. Just what were those feelings like as that all played out, and maybe the conversations you had with them, and then where you ended up here right now?
Yeah, it's weird. You have no say as a player. You really don't know. A lot of the times you're figuring stuff out on social media before you hear from anybody else. So it's tough, and to know that you really have no say and you really have no idea how things are going. And when the decision was made, obviously, there's mixed feelings about it all, but we know that our ownership and our organization has a plan for us going forward, and we're buying in to what they're doing, and I'm pumped about the new staff. And once we iron all the rest of the staff out, I'm excited to get to know everybody and get to work.
I don't think Will Levis was very happy about Mike Vrabel being fired. I mean, that was the one where I was a little surprised yesterday. I was sitting there and talking with him, and let me say this. I think Levis, the vibe I got from him, and then, he was chatting a little bit with Jimmy Wyatt after he talked to me, and he knows Jim Wyatt much better than he knows me, and so I think there was a much better comfort level there. I mean, he does really come off as a good kid. I mean, he definitely came off as a kid, like a kid, but a good kid. But that cut right there, I was a little surprised by. Again, you don't know what's going on as a player. You've got no say as a player. Mixed feelings when it came to what happened. Then he did, went back again the politically correct route, which I thought he was very politically correct in that interview. But again, then, hey, we trust the ownership and we trust the team and we're fired up about the new staff. But I didn't think it was an accident the way that he approached that whole idea of firing Mike Vrabel, saying, hold on, we do not get a say in this. And so I thought that was, again, the juiciest part of the interview. I don't know if you want to call it the most revealing or the most Now, it's funny because the Chad Brinker on the Titans podcast said, oh, yeah, no, we talked with our players a lot. We really, weighed in on them with the new coach, and we really listened to our players. And here's Will Levis saying, we have no say, we have mixed feelings, we don't know what's going on, we're finding out on social media. It's not exactly adding up there. But that, I think, was the big takeaway I had, was that, again, he was politically correct in the interview, said, I think, no bad things. And I think that's a credit to him. He apparently really likes Brian Callahan, very excited about the new coaching staff, wants to get into the playbook. He says they make decisions. I trust their decision, those kind of things. But as I wrote in my notes, I think he clearly didn't like the Vrabel firing. And there are a lot of people, not just the national people, that don't like the Vrabel firing, but I think there are a lot of people in Nashville that don't like the Vrabel firing. I think the day after they fired him, Robbie and Joe ran a poll, and I think it was 65% against firing Mike Vrabel. But here's the reality for both the players and the fans. And it does matter with the fans. It matters for two reasons. Number one, because the Titans listen to the fans. I mean, I have never covered a team that I felt like listened to what the fans said and did what the fans wanted to do more than the Titans. Now, that may not be a good thing, but that does seem, for the most part, the way that I feel like the Titans operate. I mean, they're very quick-triggered on these things. But the reason that this is important, this is what's important about the Vrabel thing. Brian Callahan has to win everybody over. Now, I like Brian Callahan, and I like what Brian Callahan represents as the offensive guru with the play sheet. And, I mean, they hired a quarterbacks coach today. Couldn't give a rat's ass because Brian Callahan is running the offense. They hired an offensive coordinator who's got no experience for the most part, and I don't give a rat's ass because Brian Callahan is running the offense. But I do like that right now. No idea if the guy's a good coach or not. I feel like he will be, but, again, there's no way to know for sure. But the whole thing about him having to win everybody over is if he gets off to a bad start or if he is not successful, then everybody will look back to what they had in Mike Vrabel. And they will say, well, we had Mike Vrabel, and we fired Mike Vrabel so that we could have that schmo. Now, if Brian Callahan becomes a Super Bowl contending coach, we'll think of Mike Vrabel the way we think of Mike Munchak, the way we think of Mike Mularkey. We'll just say, he's fine. Not Wiz and Hunt, not Jeff Fisher with all the positive history and negative bull crap. But that's the whole thing here. And that's a lot of pressure on Brian Callahan. It doesn't matter. When it comes to replacing a coach, it doesn't matter for the most part if you replace a good coach or a bad coach, because the whole goal is to win as many games as you can, try to get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. Like, that's the goal. Everybody knows that. But I do think it does mean something when you replace a successful coach, or even though Vrabel was really all that successful, but a popular coach. And apparently Vrabel's pretty popular with Will Levis. I was a little, that was not nothing when he's like, hey, it's players, we get no say. Which, again, contradicts what Chad Brinker said in the official Titans podcast. Should we make a big deal about that, Ian?
I don't know. Probably not.
I mean, it just goes back to the fact that I just thought that whole Chad Brinker thing was just so sanctimonious and just such pandering fluff. Oh, yeah, our general manager, he's connected to the players. He sits down with the players. He really went over with the players. I don't even want to paraphrase it because I can't. Ian, can you get that cut? We're not going to make a big deal about it. I promise we'll get to your phones once we play the cut. But it is funny how Levis is sitting there with me, and he's like, we don't have a say. We don't know what's going on. We find out on social media. We have no idea what they're doing. We have mixed feelings about it. And then Chad Brinker sitting there talking about how Ran Carthon connects with the players better than anybody else. I'm like, it doesn't sound that way. Do we have that cut, Ian? Go ahead and play it.
This is where Ran Carthon is just masterful. He has these relationships with these players in a way that most of us in the building don't. He has spent time with a number of players, particularly, when the change was made. And we had to get moving and finding our next head coach, talking to the players and finding out what would they like to see in their next head coach. What would they want? What does the locker room need? Rand spent some time with the players trying to get their feedback, get the information that he needs so he can try to, it might not be the exact coach that they want, but it'll be the type of coach that they're looking for. And I think Brian Callahan is just going to knock that out of the park. These players are going to love this man. I know he's an offensive-minded head coach, but he also had a really good plan when it comes to building a defense, and he had a really good vision for how he wants his defense to look. So I know Jeff will be happy once we get the DC hired and get these coaches put in place. But, yeah, Rand's a big part of that. Rand's the one that's really connected with those players in a way that probably no one else has in the building. And their input meant a lot to us as we went about the coaching search.
Even though Will Levis is like, yeah, we're finding out the same time you guys are. We have no say. Yeah, again, he's fired up for Brian Callahan. I'm fired up for Brian Callahan, too. I just think that's funny. One texter into the text line. We'll get to your phones next. 615-737-1025, because there's a text in here on the Levis front that I do want to get to. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Again, we are live Radio Row at Super Bowl 58 here on the program. And there is one other thing about Levis in the interview that, it just eats at me. It just eats at me that he didn't reveal. We'll do that next here on Stillman and Company, and then we're right to your phones. 1025-1063 the game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there that tune in to Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning on 1025 the game for details on how you could win tickets to see Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band at Nissan Stadium on August 3rd. And also tune in to Chase and Big Joe tomorrow morning between 9 and 11 for details on how you can win a pair of tickets to see Def Leppard and Journey with Steve Miller Band at Nissan Stadium. So good luck on that. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 the game. You're the quarterback. What do you want more? The dynamic star receiver or the left tackle for 10 years you stick out there and never have to worry
I'll take the
about?
left tackle.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's a critical position. If you can find a great one and develop him and not have to worry about your blind side every time you drop back 5 steps or 7 steps, I think that's really important. I think that the foundation of a good offensive line is that left tackle. A guy that is your most athletic, your best pass protector, and I think that would be a great place to start. I think there's other ways to attack the wide receiver position. I mean, losing A.J. Brown was critical. I mean, that was just you give away your best player, and he goes and is having great success in Philadelphia. I don't want to criticize what's happened in the past, but I think those are positions of need. But I think I'd start with the left tackle.
There you go. That was Rich Gannon on our show earlier this week. And I was a little surprised. Rich Gannon says, I think I go left tackle over the receivers. Then we have Warren Moon on yesterday. Warren Moon said he would go with the left tackle over the receivers. Talked about, hey, I had Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak, and I played 23 years in the NFL. And it is a little wild that, like, those guys, specifically Warren, I mean, Rich played kind of the same time Warren did, but, I mean, those guys played in an era where you could hit the quarterback. This era, there's all kinds of rules against hitting the quarterback. And yet it's like they get hurt more now than they did then. And I don't, what are we doing here? But anywho, that's a different discussion for a different day. So I did ask, so again, the 2 quarterbacks I've talked to said that they would go with the left tackle. Solomon Wilcots on the show earlier this week was, oh, no, you got to go with that tackle. Are you crazy? I was like, okay. So I asked Levis about it. Here's what he said.
It's interesting you brought that up because it is a kind of similar situation. But, no, I mean, they're the ones in the office that make the decisions on those things, and I'm staying out of it, and I trust that whatever they decide is going to be best for us.
Damn. And let me say this, too. When I asked the question, Ian, and he said, hey, it's interesting you'd say that, he looked at me like he had a take. Like he has an opinion on this.
And then that's what he got. That's what you got, huh?
Yeah. And then that was kind of the non-committal, and I was like, damn. Because, I want to know I want to know if he wants the tackle or the receiver.
No players say anything like that, though.
Hey, you never know unless you ask.
True.
That's like when they didn't ask the questions to Vrabel about the Greg Bedard reporting and all that stuff, and it was like, what is he going to say anyways? I don't know. Ask him. That might be the way to know. Didn't even ask Vrabel after the Jags game about all the rumors that day that were going around about him getting fired. It's like, got to ask. That's how I asked Levis. He didn't give an answer. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, and I saw this and I didn't get this vibe. One texter says, the Levis interview was concerning. A mediocre quarterback who seems to think he is Mahomes or Brady. I kind of wish he did not have such a good game against Atlanta. It set up the fans and him. Can we say overconfidence? I did not come away from that interview feeling like Will Levis was cocky or arrogant or condescending or conceited. I didn't feel any of that in that Will Levis interview. And I was the one who did it. I mean, I felt like, again, and I've talked about this, like, I think Levis has, like, that kind of anxiety that's, kind of, like, he's very wired. You know what I mean, Ian?
I think so.
Like, he's just very, like, tight, And I got that vibe from Levis a little bit, but there was no kind of, like, as far as arrogance, I didn't feel any of that from that interview. And then, I mean, I don't want to say they played the cut on the midday show today of Levis talking about how, he's taking a little bit of time off, but then he's going to get right back to it, and that he's ready to pin down the playbook in the classroom, and that he's going to find a way to get with the receivers however he has to do it. And I heard that, and I thought, good. Rich Gannon came on the show and said he's got to live in that facility. And I assumed that was kind of what he was hinting at. And then I heard Derek today saying, hey, don't tell people I got to take a little time off, go on vacation, do this, do that. Don't tell people that. And I was like, really? I mean, I didn't think that was negative. And if I thought something was negative, like if I thought the kid was arrogant or something like that, If I thought that way, I'd tell you. But I didn't. I thought it was very quarterbackly for a young guy. You know, there's a difference between an experienced quarterback who's got a long-term contract, who is the face of a franchise, who can sit down and basically say, here's what I think. And I know it may ruffle some feathers, but I don't care. I'm the quarterback. I can say it. Will Levis is not that. Field Yates was on our show yesterday saying, for whatever reason it may be, the commitment is not as strong with a second-round pick than it is with a first-round pick. And it's not about money. All the money's fully guaranteed. So if you draft a quarterback with the third overall pick or you draft him with the third pick in the second round, the money, while the money's more for the third overall pick, it's still already paid. Like, you still have to already give it out no matter what. It's not like you've got a Russell Wilson-like commitment to that first pick. It's hard for these teams to put their hands up and say, hey, we screwed that one up the way the Jets have with Zach Wilson, the way the 49ers did with Trey Lance, the way the Patriots are about to do with Mac Jones. And they give it all like 3 years or 2 years, or it's like it takes time before they say, hey, we screwed up. With a second-round pick, it's kind of like how the Titans have treated Malik Willis. Like, oh, yeah, we forget about it. And so I think that Levis, again, in the interview, was very quarterbackly for a non-established guy. So when you say he was like Mahomes or Brady, I'm like, where'd you get that from? Because I did not hear it that way. And, again, I like Levis fine. I don't really know him that well. He seems like a good kid. And the key word there is kid. One texter says, I'm looking at the stream, and it seems like the booth behind you is very popular. So the Sports Illustrated booth is behind us. And so, Sports Illustrated, they had Deion Sanders earlier today, and it was going wild and crazy. And quite frankly, I do really want to put I wish I had like a little rope or something here that I could just get all these people out from behind. One texter into the text line says, I like Levis just fine. I think he came off as very boring in that interview. It almost felt like it was rehearsed, and I wish that there was a little bit more personality. I don't know. I thought it was fine. Again, on the Vrabel thing, it wasn't like every answer was whatever our organization says goes. But there will be a time and a place if Levis plays well for Levis to be able to assert his opinion more than he can right now. One texter says, to respond to the guy who texted saying it sounded arrogant, I would say that I like my quarterback having a little bit of an I'm the guy attitude instead of just the yes man attitude. I don't know what you guys got this like arrogant, assertive, confident vibe. I didn't even get a confident vibe from Will Levis. Like, I just got a regular vibe, right? I even asked a question about the Atlanta game. And I said, everybody has doubts. I have doubts. You guys get on Twitter and tell me I suck so bad all the time. And then every now and then, not very often, kidding. But, there are some times where I wonder if I'm, as good as I think I am or whatever. And so I think quarterbacks are probably no different. Athletes are probably no different. Any type of performer is probably no different. And to then get out there in the Atlanta game and have the game that he had, that is a moment where, okay, now I know I can do this. Just like Peyton Manning said during the Miami game when they had that Manning cast going on. And Peyton said, I remember my rookie year, we were terrible, but we played a game against the Jets, and I led a fourth quarter comeback, and that was when I got the confidence to know that I could do it. That's what he said. And I'm like, that's important. And so, he has that kind of confidence, but I didn't think it was again, you guys use the word arrogant. I'm like, I don't feel like there was any of that. Mike says you have to be excited to see how Levis's talents mesh with Callahan's operation. I am excited to see Brian Callahan develop the young quarterback. I don't think it's going to be overnight. I really felt cemented in this belief this past season. I think it takes about 6 weeks before a football team realizes a seismic change offensively. Like, I think it takes 6 weeks. So you change a quarterback in the offseason. The first 6 weeks might be a little rocky. You change the play caller. And the operation for the first 6 weeks in the offense probably going to be a little rocky. And then if the guy sucks, it'll start to go downhill. If the guy's good, it'll start to really ramp up. And I'm going to give you the two guys that I think are kind of the poster children for this. I think Dave Canales in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield was an example of early in the season, it started very slow, but then it really picked up there. Because it takes some time to bank in those reps. You don't practice anymore the way they used to practice. They don't ever play in the preseason games anymore, so they don't get any reps there. And even if they do play in the preseason games, it's, 13 snaps? So I think it takes about 6 weeks before there's a feel of that seismic shift. And I think with Levis, it'll take a little bit more time simply because he's a young player. And there's going to be a lot of new pieces on the offense, a lot of moving parts, new play caller, new line coach, new receivers, hopefully a new tight end, tons of new linemen. Who knows about Derrick Henry? So it'll take a little bit of time. But I am optimistic that Brian Callahan can really teach up and rev up the young kid. So there is a story concerning old T. Higgins. This Titans T. Higgins thing, it never dies. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. TD will be here with us for the Power Hour, as he always is on a Thursday. Hey, due to the amount of rain expected to impact the Nashville area over the next few days, Super Saturday has been postponed to a future date. Any tickets that have been purchased will be honored on the rescheduled date. Stay tuned for more details. Stillman and Company, live from Radio Row. It's 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Can the Brown family pay all that money?
What do you mean? Can they?
They're
First of
paying
all,
Joe. They're paying Joe. They're going to pay Jamar. They're paying Brown. They're going to.
It's called the franchise tag.
I know, but that's still. I mean, that's still like $26 million or whatever it is, and a new deal for Jamar Chase is probably going to cost.
I'm
$50
telling you,
million
yes,
up
but
front.
you keep asking the same question. Yeah, they can afford to pay him for 1 year under the franchise tag. I already said that. Can they play him the long-term contract? That remains to be seen. But guess what? They've got Tyler Boyd's contract coming off the books. They got DJ Reader's contract coming off the books.
He's a good player, though.
They got Chidobe Awuzi's contract coming off the books. Yeah, they can pay him. They can afford the franchise tag. I'm sorry to break your soul. Go find your own players. Go dig through the draft
they
for
had
your own
one,
players.
They had one, Solomon, and then they didn't pay him, so they traded him to Philadelphia, and that's been a big sore spot around here.
That's your problem. You guys are good at making other teams better. You know, everybody knew you don't trade A.J. Brown. Everyone knew that. Everybody knew that.
I was in favor of the trade when it happened.
That's why. So you're sitting here now, sort of like hawking our players.
There is something to that.
All you're going to do, I'm going to tell T. Higgins when I get back. T, don't go there. All they're going to do is trade you. They don't know how to keep good players over there. They traded A.J. Brown, bruh.
There you go, Solomon Wilcots on our show earlier this week saying no way, no if, no how, it's not going to happen. So apparently T. Higgins is walking around here. I have no idea. You know, Thursday and Friday are kind of when a lot of, like, current NFL players come by to hawk whatever bull crap it is they're trying to hawk. And so I can see a guy and be like, I think he's probably an NFL player because he's got 9 people behind him, but I don't even know who some of these players are. So apparently T. Higgins is walking around here. There's the Sick podcast Talking Titans. And they say that they're the sickest Tennessee Titans podcast. Good for them. They apparently are here at Radio Row, at Radio Row, and they caught up with T. Higgins kind of the same way I caught up with Brock Bowers. And here's what T. Higgins said about the Titans.
To you to play with him again in Tennessee, to home where everything started, and you won Mr. Football over there.
It would be good, you know, going back home to family, and then being able to play for a coach that I already been under, you know, so it would be ideal.
It would be ideal, says T. Higgins, to play for Brian Callahan. And I just know that Titans fans are going to hear that, and they are going to say, oh, my God, yes, 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 yes. And I'm like, it's a lot more complicated than that, guys. It's a lot more complicated. Solomon Wilcots is not wrong when he says that they're going to use the franchise tag. T. Higgins will be franchised. That means one of two things. Either T. Higgins is going to play on the franchise tag, and the Brown family is going to have to cut a check for $26 million to him and a check for like $40 million to Jamar Chase, because the Bengals do not like to guarantee beyond the second year of a contract, or they're going to tag him and trade him. And in the case of a tag and trade, he has some say in where he goes, but not a ton of say in where he goes. The reason he has some say in where he goes, potentially in a tag and trade, is because whoever trades for him will want to have an extension in place when they trade for him, right? Like if you're giving up a first-round draft choice, you're the Titans, and you're giving up a first-round draft choice or the equivalent of a first-round draft choice or whatever, you want to have T. Higgins for the next 5 years before you do that. And so if, say, it's a team that he wouldn't want to go to, like Seattle or something like that, and he says, no, I don't want to play there. It's way too far away. Well, now Seattle's probably not going to be as interested in trading for him because they're not going to be able to sign him to a deal. So he does have at least a little bit of a say in it, but it's still so much more complicated than just he's going to be a free agent. Let's write him a huge check with all this cap money. Let's go get him. And I'm like, guys, it is a lot more complex than that. My guess is if the Titans want T. Higgins, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to trade down in the first round, maybe pick up another first-round pick in next year's draft in order to do it, so somebody moves. And I actually do need to do this at some point. I need to look up, when the 7th pick is traded, what is it traded for, so we know off the top of our head that the precedent to move from 7 to 13 is, 2 second-round picks and a third or something like that. So in order to do this, you'd have to move back in the draft, pick up more picks, and then deal that first-round draft choice that you traded back of, so you traded back to 14, and now you deal the 14th pick to Cincinnati. You pick up an extra second or some third. That might be your best bet. And I just don't, why would you do that if these receivers are really, really good and you can draft them? And then you don't have to pay them big at the beginning. So, I mean, I know Titan fans they're going to hear this. They're going to say, oh my God, he talked to the sick podcast Talking Titans at Radio Row and said, oh yeah, no, it'd be cool. And Titans are, oh my God, we're going to get T. Higgins. Oh, Jared, here we go. Texter's into the text line. Texter says, T. Higgins talk won't stop because of the Vol homers. All you have to do is mention that Callahan worked with Peyton Manning, and they start grunting and hooting and shout, Callahan hath touched the edge of the Lord Peyton Manning's greatness and his garments. Our prayers have been heard. Next, he will bring back the holy tea to the great state of Tennessee. T. Higgins didn't play at Tennessee. Like, I know he's from Oak Ridge, but he didn't play at Tennessee. Right? So why would the Vol fans be all on board for that? Why would they do that? Why would they care so much? I understand the Vol fans being like, we need Hendon Hooker. I get that. But let's not get too worked up one way or another about being able to do it, because it is a lot more complicated. Texter says, I'm torn on this one, Jared. Trading our second-round pick for T. Higgins could really work, but there should be great receivers in the second round to choose from. Bingo. Here's the question for everybody. And this is really the question for Brian Callahan. What would you rather do? Trade for T. Higgins and pay him a boatload of money? Or draft your own T. Higgins and not pay him a lot of money? Now, John Robinson thought that he was smart enough to be able to do that, and it ended up in Traylon Burks. And it ultimately got him fired. So it's very simple to say, well, hell, I'll just trade, I'll just draft my own T. Higgins instead. But then the question has to be, do you think you can draft your own T. Higgins here? And if you don't, at least you get a known commodity if you end up trading the pick for him, but then you have to pay the money. And there is a difference there. Texture says that if I met the Titans Sick podcast, that I would mesh very well with them. Okay. That's very nice to know. Texture says, what about trading Simmons for Justin Jefferson and then paying his big contract? I don't know if that's how it works, but would you be on board? Well, I don't think Minnesota would do that, although I do think Minnesota is hesitant to give Jefferson the contract. But let's say that those are the terms, right? Simmons straight up for Jefferson. Then you have to pay Jefferson the largest contract in the history of the NFL at wide receiver, which is none of my business because it's not my money. Yes, I do. Texture says, even if we don't get T. Higgins, I think the Titans will be able to find another speedy receiver, maybe in free agency or possibly in the draft, and it's not the end of the world if they don't get one. I would argue it is the end of the world. If the Titans go into the season next year with DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, Kyle Phillips, and Colton Dowell on the team, and say they add like a Scarbini or two or something like that, I do think it is the end of the world. That would be the one case where I'm like, no. That is an unmitigated disaster. And no more bull crapping around like last year. They lucked into Hopkins, but no more of that. Oh, no, you'll see, no. I don't want any of that. I want an offensive line when the draft's over, and I want my receivers when the draft is over. TD will join us next for the TD Power Hour. His reaction to what he heard from Will Levis. We'll do that coming up next. Stillman and Company live out of Radio Row, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. And our coverage of Radio Row at Super Bowl 58 is presented by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. So you got that going on for you. By the way, I have yet to mention this. I don't know why. Chris Fowler is going to join us in the next hour. Yes, in the next hour. Not within the hour, but in the next hour. And then Javon Curse, the freak, will join the program as well. And we're supposed to be joined by Mark Dominic, former NFL GM as well. So we are loaded here at Radio Row. But that, just like everything, we are not getting rid of TD and the TD Power Hour because we're at the Super Bowl. So TD is with us. TD, how are you? Brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Hey, man, I'm doing really well. It's good to be seen. I got my brother here in the studio with me. You know, it's a family affair today, the TD and BD Power Hour. How about
Okay. First of all, BD, how you doing? Just want to give him a hey, what's up?
I'm doing great. How's everybody?
All right.
Over there sounding like Barry White, huh? You might have to push me aside and let him talk.
Hey, it's very soothing with that. So, TD, I want to get your thoughts on the Levis interview because, you know, I did it last night, and I came away from it, you know, I didn't think really anything one way or another. And then as soon as we played it, somebody texted in and said, gosh, he just sounds so arrogant. It's like he thinks he's Brady or Manning. And I'm like, I didn't get that vibe from that, and I don't get that vibe from Levis. What did you think?
Yeah, I didn't get that vibe, but it just further reinforces what we talked about before he even got here, was how polarizing he is as an individual. Mm-hmm. And he's one of those guys that there is no midway. You either love him or hate him. And unfortunately, I would imagine the person that sent you that text message hates him. But I could see kind of like where he was talking about taking some time off and those types of things. Some people take that a little bit more seriously than others as far as a guy saying that he's taking time off. Me personally, I feel like after the season, you absolutely have to take a moment off to diffuse and get that out of your system so that way you could go ahead and come back refreshed and ready to hit it the way that you know a guy like Will Levis is going to hit it from a workout perspective.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And I'm not – is anybody worried about whether or not Will Levis is working out?
Right. Well, you know, you do also have the perspective, okay, is he in the playbook? Because we know this is a new mm-hmm. – this is going to be his fourth playbook in 4 years, so obviously you have that. But, I mean, just from talking to Will Levis throughout the year, I could tell that he's a pretty football knowledgeable guy, and he will pick up whatever the scheme is. And we know – that Brian Callahan has the history of working with quarterbacks, and it'll be friendly for him. I think it's going to be a good situation.
You know, what I really found fascinating about Levis in the interview was the last question I asked him, which was, of all the games that they lost last year, like which one kind of sticks in his craw? Because, for instance, Indianapolis, I actually think he played really well in that fourth quarter, and in overtime they drive down and kick a field goal, and then Indy comes back down the field and scores a touchdown. Yeah. But he kind of played well in that game. Houston, the game where they wore the Oilers jerseys, you know, he got sacked 7 times in the second half, missed the throw to Burks, and I was wondering if he'd include that. You know, Tampa and Jacksonville were kind of out of his control, and he said Pittsburgh. And I found that to be fascinating, and the reason I say that, TD, is because I think the Pittsburgh game was the one probably where he felt like maybe he had the biggest chance to make a difference in that game. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I like that he picked that one out because if you remember that second to the last drive is 4th and 6. You mm-hmm. have that cover one. There's a safety. He shaded to the right-hand side. Levis's right-hand side. The alert is instantly to go to Traylon Burks, right? That's your alert. That's what he's coached to do, and that's what he did. But if you remember, you had that twins on the right, and you had Chig Okonkwo had the release first, and then Kyle Phillips had the release, and he ran that whip type of route, and he was wide open. And remember I asked Levis about that, and he said that that's one thing he does have to work on, working from top down and recognizing that you don't always have to go there with the football, take the deep shot. And I could tell that stuck with him because not that game but the following one, he and Kyle Phillips, they connected 4 times for 66 yards. So for me, it doesn't surprise me that he said that because that was a learning point for him. And I'm not saying I created a learning point. He knew that. And that was something that even Tim Kelly talked about, where it's like, okay, I coached him. Like, he's coached to go to this alert. We don't want to coach that out of him. Like, that's what he's told to do. So it's understandable in that situation, but he was able to balance that later. So I think, it's understandable that he used that game, let alone that play. And that was when he threw his first interception. And he also, you could tell that he must be living right, because there were a bunch of other times where he should have had interceptions, but luckily for him, it was dropped.
Best defensive back on the field was DeAndre Hopkins that night. I do wonder this, though. When I asked him about, the game slowing down and, does that give him confidence going into year 2, he talked about how he was proud of the fact that he doesn't think that he ever made the same mistake twice this year. And you've got this, encyclopedic brain when it comes to film of what happened in Titans games. Did you feel like that was the case with Levis? And kind of how do you see him and his mistakes and learning from them going forward?
Yeah, that was the case for the most part. There were a few times where he missed safeties just kind of hanging in the passing lane, and it should have been an interception. But I think for the most part, he did progress from game to game. And what ended up happening was it was like a new set of things that he had to learn from. So he, for the most part, did an excellent job of not making that same mistake twice. And that's why you really like to, as a QB coach, you really like to work with him, because that's something that he takes personally and makes it his mission not to do.
What do you make of Warren Moon and Rich Gannon both talking about how, Vrabel made a big deal about this at the time, about taking care of his body and not putting himself in harm's way. And both guys came on the show this week, and they were like, he has got to take care of himself.
Yeah.
And as far as repeating mistakes twice, I don't ever remember Levis lowering the shoulder after he did in the Miami game, but it was something that both of them made sure to highlight when talking about Levis.
Right, and it's not just lowering the shoulder in that situation. Sometimes it's, okay, you got to feel, and that's an area where he has an issue, feeling that backside pressure. There are times where you see him just get body rocked, and just like, dang, dog, you gotta get rid of the ball. So he could live to see another play that way too, and that's what I would imagine Warren Moon was referring to. But it's just like I remember in Philly when Carson Wentz first got there in 2016. I remember I used to joke with him. I would say, Carson, there's a song that Tina Turner has. It's called "We Don't Need Another Hero." Think about that song and understand that it applies to you. You don't always have to, and it's great to want to fight for that extra yard, and that's what you've been trained to do throughout your whole time, but you got to understand you got to live to see another play, and you don't always have to take on a defender and put yourself in harm's way. And I think that's the same thing with Levis. Like, you look at when he had the fumble, and then he ran up and he made the guy fumble it again, and they recovered it. You look at that situation, that's a great play, and that's something that you want to have. Like, you don't want to have to coach a guy up to be aggressive. You want to be able to try to tone that down, but you have to walk that balance. And I think that's what you have with Levis, is you got to walk that balance and just make him understand, sometimes slide or not give up on the play, but realize it's the end of your journey on that particular down.
Did he get helicoptered too in that
Seahawks game? Yes. Yeah. And that was one of the times where I'm like, dog, you gotta be careful, man, because he dove. It was the one for the first down. He dove. It was like Any Given Sunday, right? When Cap dove into the end zone and he got helicoptered. Mm-hmm. It was the same type of play.
And that is, again, like, both guys were stressing, like, hey, you got to take care of his body here. Mm-hmm. This is playing quarterback in the NFL, and I do wonder also. I asked Warren Moon about a backup quarterback and how important for a young quarterback an experienced backup is in the room with the coaches. Yeah. And he said, I wish I had a guy that was an experienced, not trying to take my job, but I wish I had an experienced guy in there. And I'm thinking to myself, is there a Brian Callahan quarterback? I'm thinking maybe Trevor Siemian, who's got experience and could play in a pinch, but absolutely would not try to take Levis's job and would know what Brian Callahan's trying to do. Is there a guy out there that kind of fits that Neil O'Donnell mold for Levis, and do you think that's important?
I'll start it off with this. It is ultra important, and I remember talking to his name slips my mind. He went to Cleveland out of Notre Dame. Oh, what is his name?
DeShone
Kaiser. And I remember talking to DeShone Kaiser when he got here, and when he was in Cleveland, one of the receivers, Bryce Treggs, he was cut by the Eagles, went to Cleveland, and he came back to the Eagles. And I remember he told me it was crazy. When Kaiser would come off the field, nobody would talk to him. So there was nobody there to go over what had happened on the field. That is something that is a huge detriment to a young quarterback. And Will Levis obviously is a young quarterback. Having Tannehill there to discuss things, oh, you know what? In this situation, you want to do that and go here with the football. Kind of hold the safety and those type of things. To have somebody tell you that and go over that with you is really important. Obviously, Tannehill won't be back, but you look at some of these guys. I mean, listen, I'm not big on a guy like Blaine Gabbert, but somebody like that, I tell you who would be really good, Tyrod Taylor. If you bring him in, you look at Jacoby Brissett. I wouldn't even be opposed to Jameis Winston as a backup. You know what I mean? Because, again, this is somebody that will be a veteran set of eyes for him to come off the field. Personally, I would love for Jameis to come here because this dude is the funniest person on the planet unintentionally, and I would love to have those jokes to experience.
I'm trying to think if there's if there's one of those guys that has a Callahan background.
Yeah, I can't think of any of those guys, honestly, that have a Callahan background, to be frank with you. I can't think of any in particular. But
like if the league would give up on Derek Carr, then that would be the perfect backup to have.
Yeah, I don't know.
For a guy like Levis.
I wouldn't. I think Derek Carr would be I wouldn't go that route.
Yeah.
Because he's
and
one of those
I think,
guys. He's one of those guys where it's like he's going to not any backup you bring in here is going to be fighting for the starting job. Don't get it twisted. But he's one of those guys where I don't think that the backup role is something that is fully accepted by him, and understandably, because in my opinion, he's still a starter.
Yeah, and the league thinks he's a starter, and he's going to be starting in New Orleans. The more I think about it, these kind of guys and I'm like, you know what? That's exactly what Shane Steichen did in Indianapolis. Was he took the kind of quasi-starter, because Gardner's got his issues. I mean, Gardner is a tough player, but, Gardner is not a legitimate number one.
Right.
And brought him in to kind of be the caddy to Richardson. But then obviously when Richardson got hurt, it was like, okay, well, Gardner has to play now. And that's the kind of guy I'm wondering about to put behind Levis, who has that connection that Gardner had with Steichen in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I can't
just
think
don't
of
know
one
if there's a guy
direct.
there.
I mean, I mentioned Wentz earlier. It's an indirect connection. He spent part of last season with McVay, and, there's correlation there somewhat down the line, via Zach Taylor. So that's an option, but I don't think there is any particular guy. They still need to – they're going to have to bring somebody in. Malik Willis, I don't think that's a ship that they need to continue sailing, to be honest with you.
TD is with us. The great debate that we've had here that I am starting to change my mind on, which everybody knows is not my best attribute in terms of changing my mind. The skill position versus the tackle with the 7th overall pick. We'll get TD's thoughts on it. We'll do that coming up next here on our program. TD is brought to you by the ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch and grabbing your favorite football snacks and, of course, placing some super bets. And, again, I've always said go under on the national anthem. Now, I'm a little nervous about this because now I know that it's Reba who's going to be singing it. Reba is a veteran. She is not somebody who is going to try to probably drag it out like somebody who's, on the Super Bowl stage or the big stage for the first time. So I am nervous that I've been saying that all week, but I'm not going to stop riding the horse that I've been riding. And I don't know how you people can pick against Mahomes if you're picking San Francisco. I heard somebody on the midday show pick San Francisco. Chris Sanders picked San Francisco. I think you guys are crazy. I'm not picking against Mahomes. FanDuel has so many ways for you guys to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets like which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. And make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over in present Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Do you think if the Titans are in that spot where there's an elite receiver available and an elite tight end, or excuse me, an elite tackle, that they need to take the tackle or they need to take the receiver? Because the line's been a mess.
It's hard. And I'll tell you this. I think either way, as long as they prove to be what we think they're going to be, I think you've made the right decision. And here's what I say. Jamar Chase, obviously we love him in Cincinnati. I would not have done anything differently. But had you taken Penei Sewell, look at how far he's helped change their organization, right? We always say touchdowns follow blocking, not the other way around.
And I think we've learned that in Nashville.
You got to have – and if you get 3 guys on that offensive line who are first-round picks, you're going to be really good. You're going to score a lot of touchdowns. I still can look at this. In the Super Bowl, they're playing the Rams. Joe Burrow is ready to hit Jamar Chase. He's about to beat Jalen Ramsey. Bam, he goes down. Game over. They still need the tackle. As we sit here today, they still need that player. Joe Burrow has been sacked, hit more than any other quarterback in the NFL. So whatever we can talk about all the touchdowns that Jamar Chase, he is a star. But what has it done to help with the longevity of Joe Burrow? Not a whole lot. What has it done to help win a championship? This close, but you didn't win it. So the argument still remains. I don't think they made the wrong pick by taking Jamar Chase, but I can tell you Bill Callahan, the father, is going to be in there. Look, we need to shore up this offensive line. I don't care who we get at wide receiver.
Hey, that was Solomon Wilcots earlier this week. TD, I am starting to move off my stance of if it's the elite receiver there like Neighbors or Odunze and the elite tackle like Alt, I was leaning receiver. Now with Warren Moon, Rich Gannon, Solomon all talking tackle, I'm starting to lean the other way. Where do you sit on this discussion debate?
Jared, shame on you. You know that this league is based off of playmakers. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and that's period. And I get the importance of the offensive line. But just the same, those couple plays that Solomon Wilcots pointed out, okay, let's go back to 2021. One of the first touchdowns that the Bengals scored was set up by what? A quick throw to Jamar Chase, and 40 yards later they're in scoring position. I'm sure you remember what happened after the interception. It took one throw, a 19-yard gain. Chase won immediately at the line of scrimmage, made a big-time catch, and guess what they were able to do? After a Joe Mixon 2-yard or whatever yard run it was, a 51-yard field goal by Money McPherson. Brian Callahan said it himself, and it's funny because I did a story for next week about what the Titans need to do, some of their biggest needs, and I listened back to your interview that you had with him, which was really good. You're on the road, too, by the way. I will say the Will Levis one was really good. The Brian Callahan one, and listening to it again, was an excellent interview. And I love the fact that you asked him about Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase. And what did he say? I like the guys who score touchdowns.
Yep.
The guys who make a play on the outside. And he said when it comes down to it, you want that guy that's going to win a one-on-one matchup and score a touchdown. In my opinion, in that case, Chase was the better option, and that's just what it is. But obviously that was a unique situation. Now you look at this one, okay, let's say Malik Neighbors.
And I know you're a big Joe Alt guy.
Yeah, I'm a big Joe. And I don't normally have draft crushes, so to speak, on the big uglies, you know what I mean? Because I love the skill players. But you look at Joe Alt, he's someone, if he's there, I would probably 9 times out of 10 take him. Because you just give him a jersey with 76 on it and you say, congratulations, you are our left tackle for the next 10 years. And in 4 years, we're going to give you a big deal, and we're going to pay you even more money than we're paying you now. That's the way I would look at it with Joe Alt. However, there's ways that you could attack this situation. They clearly need offensive line and wide receiver. So the Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze versus Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu conversation is an interesting one because you also have to look at, okay, what's going to be available to you the second go-round? This draft is very deep at offensive line and receiver. And one of the things in going to the Senior Bowl that I was able to gather is there's an expectation that 8 or 9 offensive linemen are going to be drafted in the first round. So a part of good drafting is definitely comparing prospect to prospect, but also knowing how the board is likely to fall. That being said, I would probably, if Joe Alt's there, I'm taking him because this team cannot afford. We know what has happened at the at the offensive line position in a couple of their drafts. You got Dylan Radins, who is still a work in progress. We know Isaiah Wilson. That was just a complete debacle, right? They need to find offensive linemen, and then you got the Andre Diller signing, which was another dumpster fire. So they have to find offensive linemen. I know you're still. Jury's out for you on Peter Skoronski. That's a great pick, in my opinion. He's going to pay off, but you complement that by going left tackle, and you go with the guy who has the high floor in Joe Alt. Now, that being said, if Alt's gone, now, Odunze's there, Neighbors is there. I probably take those guys over the offense, over Fashanu, probably. And the thing for me about Odunze is if you watch Odunze, he has that playmaking ability on the perimeter. He's not a guy you put in a slot, but he's a guy you line him up outside, he's going to win one-on-one matchups, and including the contested catches. That's something he specializes in. Malik Neighbors is just a guy that you say, look, man, I'm going to give you the football, and you just score. whether it's a jet sweep and end around, whether it's, one of the now routes or running a slant, whatever, he is a guy that's going to score. So you look at what Brian Callahan has said, guys that will win on the outside and guys that will score touchdowns. I take either of those two over over Olaf Fushano. Joe Alt's there, I take him. You come back in the second round, there's an assortment of guys. You got A.D. Mitchell, who the Cambridge High School product.
Yep.
You got Xavier Worthy, who is a tremendous route runner and a deep threat. You got the guy, I like Xavier Leggett a lot out of South Carolina. Body type, the way he moves reminds me of A.J. Brown. So there's a lot of options you could do in the second round. And if you want to address the receiver position later, like the double up, I got to see a guy up close and personal by the name of Javon Baker out of UCF. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. And you talk about routes, he's an outstanding route runner. He's a guy that will win vertically down the field too. Like, we could do the whole rest of the segment on some of these prospects, but those are just a few to put a name out there. And look, you got the Super Bowl, you got Deebo Samuel, a guy who plays like him. You got Malachi Corey right out of the backyard, Western Kentucky. So those are options.
So what I find fascinating, there's two things I find fascinating. Number one, Field Yates yesterday was basically talking about how if you go with the tackle in the first round, now, they could trade back and get a first-round tackle because there's, as you said, there's going to be about 6 or 7 offensive linemen in the first round. Mm-hmm. But if you take the tackle at 7, he feels confident you can still get the receiver in the second round, though it won't be a Dunze or Neighbors, but you'll still get one, a good one, whereas he's not as confident that you'll be able to get a starting tackle right then, right there if you go receiver. But then I wonder this, how much does Bill Callahan kind of change this out? Rich Gannon the other day was like, this guy could take a nobody and turn him into a good offensive lineman. But then I think, well, what could he do to a guy who is a somebody?
Exactly.
And what he could turn them into. And so I do wonder, like, when they evaluate these prospects, if there is a second-round tackle or something like that, does Bill Callahan say, hey, give me him, I can make it work, and we can still get the premium touchdown scorer? What do you make of that kind of scenario? And how
I think that's something that does come into play. And I remember there was a guy by the name of Wyatt Teller who was coming out, and I remember watching him like, man, this is a good player. I like the size is good, his movement's good. I'm no offensive line guru or anything like that, but like I know some traits that I like in offensive lineman, and he had those. And he, working with Brian Callahan, was a Pro Bowler, is a Pro Bowler. Right? So, yeah, that's definitely right. And you look at some of these players, maybe like a Jones from Texas is a guy, he has the traits, the size. Like, you can't coach up the size that he has, right? 6'5", 320-something pounds. You can't coach that up. And he has movement skills. So he will possibly be there in the second round. So you could go that route. You look at Patrick Paul, a guy out of Houston who you'll hear me talk about a lot. He has traits. His footwork is tremendous. I watched him in one-on-ones, the way he took on some of these blocks and how he got caught out of position but was athletic enough to shift his lower body in time and reposition himself to get back in position and ride the defensive end or the edge guy out of the way. So when you have traits like that, yeah, definitely a guy like a Bill Callahan can enhance that. And that does give you that luxury, but end of the day, man, I think you draft players just based upon their talent and how you think you can help that, regardless of what you have as the coach.
Well, especially to Warren Moon saying that he would go offensive line because he talked about, I know what it was like having Mike Munchak and Bruce Matthews, and I do think that if Alt is as good as everybody says he is, and if Peter, with a better offensive line coach, with a better tackle and center next to him, becomes a star, now I'm like, maybe that could be, the foundation for the next 10 years on the left side of the line to never, ever, ever have to worry about it with Callahan coaching him. TD is with us. Yeah. Warren Moon, speaking of him, opines on Derrick Henry's future. What do we make of it? And what do we make of the scenario that may be playing out in front of us? We'll do that with TD next here on Stillman and Company. Again, TD is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Where do you kind of see Derek doing, and what do you think is probably right for him, or what his mindset should be going into free agency?
Yeah, I'd love to see him finish his career with the Titans. He's had an unbelievable career there. I think he still has some fuel left in the tank. They do need to improve their offensive line a little bit, but I think when you have a Derrick Henry, it makes the job of the quarterback a little bit easier because he can dictate what the defense is going to do. You can't play too high shell all the time with him back there. You got to bring that safety down, and when you bring that safety down, there's only so many things you can do defensively, so it really helps the quarterback as far as the passing game. So I think having the threat of him on the football team is something they need to really consider, and especially Derek. If he goes to another team where there's maybe $1 million difference or something like that, is it really worth going to another football team for that slight of difference? I say $1 million like it's nothing, but you know what I mean in today's
Sure.
football. So if it's the difference between $10 million and $12 million or something like that, why not stay with the Titans, a place that a place you call home, and developing with a good young quarterback, unless maybe he has goals to go somewhere where he wants to win a championship, and maybe there's a championship type contender that wants his services.
There you go, Warren Moon talking about Derrick Henry. And the more I look, TD, at the market, and I look at the running backs that are going to hit the market and the running backs that might be in this draft, the more I start to wonder, is there going to be a place that would make more sense for Derrick Henry than coming back to the Titans? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Dallas is obviously one. The Ravens, you look at what happened to them, that's another one. And Warren Moon obviously is going to know how the rushing attack impacts the ability to pass the ball, and what he said, right? You have to drop that extra safety down, so that's less coverage in the secondary, when you have a rushing attack. So I could see Baltimore, I could see Dallas. Those would be basically the only two situations I think would be parallel to what the Titans would be able to offer.
My thing is, I just don't see those teams wanting to spend the money on a 30-year-old running back when they're, for instance, let's say, what do you think the market price tag for Derrick is?
I would say probably $6 million per. Like I would say a 2-year, $15 million deal with 10 to 12 guaranteed. I would say that would be around where Henry would land. And it's crazy because we're talking about the guy who was second in the league in rushing last year and still showed promise behind that offensive line. But that's the value I would probably say.
I just see these computer nerds sitting there, saying, well, our numbers and our analytics say that Zach Moss at $3 million is better for our team than Derrick Henry at $6 million.
But guess what? And it's funny, on the way over here, I was telling my brother about Derrick Henry, his size and speed. Those same algorithms and formulas, it doesn't account for a 6'3", 250-pound, 30-year-old running back that could still run 21, and since we want to be like technical, 21.53 miles per hour.
When did he hit that one this year?
Huh?
When did he hit that one this year?
He hit that on the Jaguars run. You remember the one? Yeah. Where he got hawked down. I'm like, hey, Derek, you're not supposed to get hawked down.
I wonder, though, like, does the Ravens playoff exit, do they look at that and say,
that's what I'm saying,
we need Derrick Henry, or do they look at that and say, we just need to hand the ball to Gus Edwards more?
Nah. Well, they needed to run the ball more regardless. But having that home run hitter, that guy that can still serve as that just constant, you know what Marshawn Lynch said, you run through, boop, 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 boop's face over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's what you could do with Derrick Henry. And imagine that behind that, I know Kevin Zeitler is going to be a free agent, but you look at, Morgan Moses, your guy at right tackle. You look at, Ronnie Stanley, whatever they do to address that offensive line, on that guard, center guard triangle.
Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all that. I would trust Derrick Henry behind it. I definitely would.
See, I'm with you. I just don't know that, like I think if there's that kind of offer for him, a 2-year deal with, like, let's say $10 million guaranteed, I think he's gone. If that's what the market bears for him, I just don't see the running back. Like Zeke, and I don't know how you feel about Zeke. I think Zeke is I just think he's still a pretty decent player at this point in his career.
Zeke at this point isn't Derek, though. He's not there. You watched some Patriots film. You know that. Come on,
but I actually thought Zeke was a positive thing on that terrible team.
Yeah, a positive thing and a playmaker, though, that's two different. They both start with P, but they're two different, man. Come on.
I know, but
know
nobody
that.
was offering Zeke any money.
But
this
again, it goes back to what I'm saying. Zeke is hardly the player he was and absolutely, positively not the player Derrick Henry is now. It's two different players. And I get you're talking about position, but I think Derrick Henry is going to continue to be that outlier where it's like, yeah, we normally don't pay a 30-year-old back, but you know what? He's not just your ordinary 30-year-old back. So I could see, and the Ravens in a desperate listen, man, like they're tired of losing in these types of situations. I could see them saying, you know what? And especially, Ozzie Newsome is old school. Old school, and he's not the GM, but rest assured he has a lot of pull in there.
If Ozzie wants something done, it's
going to get done. You know it. So I could see them saying, like, hey, look, man, this is going to be the hammer that puts us over the top. Let's do it. But let me say this, though, because going back to your interview, or no, actually going to Chad Brinker's interview. I ran through all three interviews, so they're running together. But going to his interview, he talked about obviously, free agent playmakers are a premium, but you also have the cap casualty route where you could kind of shop at Costco's, I think he alluded to. And Joe Mixon is the guy I would look at because I could see him being a cap casualty. And if that's the case, we've already seen him be successful in this offense. You figure, 2020 he had 12 or 21, he had 1,200 yards. If he is a cap casualty – and you don't go the Derrick Henry route, I would absolutely look at bringing him in. What do you think of that?
Well, I do. I think Mixon's a good player. I also think that because Mixon's not Derrick Henry, it would allow for Tajay Spears to really be 1A in that equation, where I think it would be hard for Titan fans, if they're not winning with Tajay Spears as 1A, to accept Derrick Henry as 1B. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Whereas with Mixon, they wouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, I could agree to that fully, But I'm just saying, I think that's another option. I personally, I would look at bringing Derrick Henry back at the right price, honestly. I would look at doing it. And obviously, there is a degree of wanting to move on and have the newness to the offense, et cetera. But there's still a place in this offense for Derrick Henry. Brian Callahan said it himself.
Yeah, I think Brian Callahan said – I mean, I don't know. Maybe I was reading too much into this, but when Jim Wyatt caught up with Peyton Manning at the Pro Bowl and Peyton Manning said that they'd love each other and he told Derek that he'd love Brian Callahan and Brian Callahan will love him, I didn't think that was Peyton just shooting off the hip. I mean, I think Peyton and Brian Callahan are very, very close. And I definitely thought that, there might have been a message because to your point, there may be other suitors for Derek. And the Titans can't just break the bank to make sure that they bring Derek back because that would be irresponsible. So I could see Callahan trying to tell Peyton, hey, let Derek know that we got a plan for him if he comes back. I think the Titans will want him back, but I think the question is at what price, and then that's compared to at what price for everybody else.
Yeah, and, Callahan, he's in the few times I've heard him speak, he's done a good job of being able to play both sides of the fence. Because you look at that, right? He left it open. Oh, yeah, there's a place for him. You know what I mean? So that way, if they don't sign him, no one could be like, well, Brian Callahan just didn't have a way to fit him in the offense. No one could say that. He's making it clear. And just the same like your Skoronski interview where he was like, yeah, I saw my guard, but, that doesn't mean I'm going to say that we get him in here and our guys look at him and he doesn't play tackle. I'm not going to put myself – he's done a good job of playing both sides of the fence.
Your questions for TD are next. As always, 615-737-1025. TD is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Stillman and Company, live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 58, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The people are ready to talk to TD. Let's get to them. Presented by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. By the way, the TD Power Hour brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Armin has been waiting patiently. Armin, you're up with TD.
Hey, TD, 2 questions for you about the draft. Do you think the Titans should trade down for extra draft capital? And who is your favorite wide receiver for the second round?
All right, Armin,
like
great
that.
questions.
I like that. I like the name, too. It reminds me, remember back in the day, the Sixers, we used to watch Armin Gilliam? Yeah, that name made me think of him. That's two great questions. I don't think they should trade down because you look at this draft, and this is something, Jared, we talked about last week when you asked me some of the stuff I brought back from the Senior Bowl. This draft will be impacted by NIL as far as how deep it is at most positions. O-line and receiver are different, but I think this is a draft where you might want to consider trading up because with the NIL, you got a lot of players who would be coming out that would be legit, 5th to 7th round prospects that are going back to school because they could get paid to go back to school, increase their draft stock. And just to bring the point home a little bit further, that's even going at the top end of the draft. Like your school, Louisville, you got Quincy Riley, who was supposed to be at the Senior Bowl, but he's going back. He got the NIL money, but he's also going to be working towards being a first-round pick. So, no, Armin, I wouldn't trade back in this. I wouldn't trade back far. If you trade back like from 7 to 10 to 15 and acquire a third-round pick, okay, now you're doing something because in that 10 to 15, then you could get a Tyrese Fuaga. You could get a player like that. You could get, why are names slipping my mind? Tyler Guyton. You could get, a J.C. Latham, those types of players.
Trevor and Field Yates both brought up Mims, the tackle from Georgia, as guys they really
Mims.
like,
yeah.
but that needs more seasoning. And I'm like, doesn't that sound like somebody that'd be great for Bill Callahan?
That's a Bill Callahan special. That's a Bill Callahan special. Great point there. So
Caleb
you do have that. Armin had one other question, though. One other question about who's my favorite receiver in the second round. That's none other than Xavier Legette. I love his game. I love, and I got to talk to him and just size him up in person. Yeah, he's 6'1", 223. Oh yeah, you gotta love that with his movement skills.
Caleb says, TD, if Brock Bowers is available at 7, should the Titans be considering?
Look, you look at this Super Bowl, right? You got George Kittle and Travis Kelce in this game. Leading the offense. Or among the leaders on the offense. So I would consider it. I think Brock Bowers is that same type of player. I would consider it, but I wouldn't do it because you look at Callahan, his offense, it isn't really set up to feature a tight end. Now, a good coach is always going to shift the scheme to what you bring in, but I think you could get other players that would be more impactful at the position, even though we know he said he wants to be a Titan. But then he has some stuff about the Chargers, too. I think he's playing the game right.
Well, I also think that Bowers is, yes, he's a tight end, but I don't look at Travis Kelce as a tight end. He's so different. You know how he's
different, but they use him in line a lot. You know what I mean? By position, he's a tight end. But I get what you're saying because you look at a lot of the things they do, those 3-by-1 sets, and they let him be on the backside, isolated, and just put that sauce he puts on the routes and make it happen. I remember when he came here. For TEU, the first one, and I watched him run routes and some of the things that he was talking about. He compared the top of the route, like how you push out at the top of your route. He compared it to a pitcher exploding off the mound. And I was just like, man, that's a great point. So you're right, to your point, he's not just your ordinary tight end.
One texter says, I don't think there's a Jamar Chase in this draft, TD, and the Titans do not have Joe Burrow. What I wonder, though, is, and Brian Callahan made sure to mention this when we talked about it after he got hired about the Chase Sewell thing, was we knew Jamar, especially in that specific case, was an elite player. To that point, do you think Neighbors and Odunze, because I think we can agree the Titans are out of the mix for Marvin Harrison. Yeah. Do you think that Odunze and Neighbors are that kind of prospect?
Well, there are some who think Neighbors is a better prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr., which is wow. But there's some that think that, and he's right. You got this. You got a preview of Chase and Burrow at LSU. It was a national championship, and they set the record for most touchdown receptions in a single season, breaking my guy Riedel Anthony's record from '95 with the Gators. But, yeah, I think when you look at that type of situation, the playmaking ability that Jamar Chase has, that hasn't been in the draft for 3 to 4 years, maybe even 5, arguably 5. So I get outright going receiver over O-line there. It's a closer argument here because you don't have that quote-unquote generational receiver that you just say, I know he's going to come in the league and have double-digit touchdowns, 80 catches, and 1,000 yards.
Robert in Spring Hill. TD, my question is there anyone in the draft that you would trade up to go get from 7 maybe into the top 5?
Anyone to trade up? Nah. I don't. I think the way the board looks, either way, if you stay put at 7, you're going to get a darn good, probably a top 5 type talent pushed down to you because you got your Jaden Daniels who's probably going to get drafted high. You got your, other guys like that, there's 3 quarterbacks that are probably going to go top 5. So it's going to push a really good receiver, a really good offensive lineman down to you.
Well, I just think it's as simple as we assume that Harrison goes at 4, that the Titans are guaranteed one of Joe Alt, Roma Dunze, or Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I would say they're guaranteed one of those guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Texter says, TD, how worried are you at the Giants at 6 being a trade target for teams that want to make sure to hop the Titans to get Joe Alt?
Or Neighbors. The Giants at 6 and the Chargers at 5. You look at their situation. Andrew Thomas just got the big deal. They drafted Evan Neal with a high first-round pick a couple years ago. So I would more than likely think that they would chill that offensive line. So that would be the target. But, again, it goes back to, okay, if a team does that, you stay put and you still got a darn good player coming to you. So one way or the other, because you could put Olu Fushano in that mix also, the Penn State, who, he's 20. The guy can't even go to a bar. And like he's 20 years old, you know what I mean? But he's someone that you could have come in and just, especially with a Bill Callahan, you talk about banking on upside. His upside is higher than Joe Alt's. It's just the floor for Alt is higher than Fushano. So that's another guy that could be there.
One texter says, TD, is there any thought that the Titans may want to trade back in this first round and get more players and more picks, or has NIL ruined what the potential other picks they would get could be?
Yeah, I think NIL has enhanced that. So this is one of those drafts where, if it takes a third-round pick next year or something like that, paired with some lower draft picks, and your 4th or something like that. You know how a package to put together to move back into the first, right? Let's say you don't get Alt or Fushano up there and a guy like Jordan Morgan is sitting there and you feel that you could, work through the short arm thing that is supposed to be an issue, then, yeah, you trade back into the first to get a guy like that. I personally would just sit at what, 38 or 39 is it? I would just sit there and know, okay, I'm going to have a good receiver possibly. I'll have, a pretty solid offensive line. Because, again, like I mentioned Christian Jones, out of Texas, he showed well in one-on-ones down there. You know what I mean, at the Senior Bowl. 6'6", 333 pounds it is, I believe. You got a lot of size there and a lot to work with. And, again, you have a really good coach that can help that. So I don't know for sure that I would, give up that draft capital to move up. It depends on how significant of a prospect is there at O-line.
TD, before we get you out of here, I do want your thoughts on the offensive coaches that have been hired, Nick Holes and Bo Hardigree.
Yeah.
Just that the Titans are adding into the staff. What do you think of that?
Yeah, Nick Holes, I still will maintain that letting Charles London go was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. And that's no slight on Nick Holes. You look at the way things are set up, I don't know that Brian Callahan will be able to spend as much time with Will Levis as you would like for him to do to really fully develop him as a head coach. It's tough to do that. So I figured they were bringing an offensive lineman and a QB coach in Charles London that can continue that progress. Offensive coordinator, excuse me, I said lineman. But you look at Nick Holes, his history, he had worked with Andrew Luck at Stanford, quite a bit of it. But in the league, who has he worked with and helped develop? So that's something that leaves some questioning. You know what I mean? I'm not familiar with the QB coach that they hired. I do know that he and Callahan were together in 2014 in Denver. I do know that the Raiders' offense got better when it shifted from McDaniels to him as the play caller. So you do have that. That's something to hang your hat on. I don't know how that's going to work out. The one thing I do look forward to, and I know a lot of people have given up on Traylon Burks, give Trey a chance with Tyke Tolbert as his coach. I think that's going to be a good match. Tyke is a very technician, a technical coach. He knows how to pull the best out of especially young players. You look at his catalog of young receivers he's worked with. So, yeah, I like that move, though.
Teron Davenport is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, tell us about ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Yeah, for sure. ESPN Bet is now live in Tennessee right here, and it's the official sportsbook of ESPN, and it's the only place where you can find daily exclusive and offers with your favorite ESPN personalities and shows. Go ahead and sign up today, and if you do so, as a new user, you'll get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. You find all your markets and bets that you like, such as in-game wagering, cross-sport parlays. Let's say you want to pair up, the Lakers with the Predators. You could do that. You could tease it, and you got all the props that you can handle. That's ESPN Bet. Download today. What a play. Of course, you have to be 21 or older in Tennessee, and if you have any gambling problems, for support there, you could call or text the TN Red Line at 800-889-9789.
TD, good to see you. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate you. Enjoy it out there.
Yep, Teron Davenport joining us as always for the TD Power Hour. So two high-level quarterbacks of yesteryear have the same advice for Will Levis. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Super Bowl Radio Row 58. That's right, LVIII. Brought to you by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. Again, we got the Sports Illustrated booth right behind us, and Josh Allen is behind there. So now there's this all big old huge crowd out there, and now it's like it's so distracting. Just so distracting. Oh, my goodness. But that's okay. We'll be able to handle it. So the whole thing that this is all about when it comes to the Titans is whether or not the quarterback becomes the guy behind me right now, Josh Allen. Again, we played the cut Brian Billick on the midday show the other day here from Radio Row when he said, in today's era, you have to have that guy if you're going to compete for the Super Bowl. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer. It doesn't have to be Mahomes. But you have to have that guy. And so that's what this is all about, is whether or not Levis becomes that guy. You know, the Titans hired a new quarterbacks coach today, and they hired a new offensive coordinator earlier this week. And I'm like, none of that matters to me. Like, I couldn't give a rat's ass because I think this is all about Brian Callahan. But it is, what can you do to keep that quarterback healthy and develop them and everything else? But the Titans have to meet in the middle with Will Levis because one of the big concerns that both Rich Gannon and Warren Moon had on our show earlier this week, great quarterbacks of the past decades, is he's got to take care of himself. He can't lower the shoulder. He can't get helicoptered in the air. He's got to get rid of the ball. He cannot take the pops that he has taken in the past. He just cannot do it. What he did this year, and I know he's a tough guy, and we can all agree, but he's got to take care of himself. In fact, I asked him about year 1 to year 2, and he talked about how, hey, he's making sure that I'm not making the same mistake twice.
I think, honestly, one of my strengths is I don't think watching the tape from week to week, like it was rare that I caught myself making the same mistake twice, like 2 weeks in a row or something like that. So I really do, like, take coaching well, I think, and that I'm able to, understand that, making a mistake for the first time, like, that's going to happen to any player, but, it becomes more on you when it happens the second time. So I take pride in that, and but it's important to not beat yourself too up about those plays because I know that I have the ability to make all the plays that I didn't.
I think he's thinking more about the mental mistakes, about the idea of, I thought I could fit the ball in that window and I didn't see the safety, or I'm supposed to look the guy off, or I'm supposed to wait for the guy to come out of his cut and then throw those kind of things. When he says, I look at the tape and I didn't feel like I was making the same mistake twice. And that might be true. But what he's got to do is he's got to take care of himself. Because he was a surefire, no doubt, first-round pick after the 2021 season, and then he got hurt. Got hurt at Kentucky. And then he didn't play as well. And after he didn't play as well, he kept saying, or he didn't say, but everybody kept saying for him, he's got this injury. He had the foot, he had the shoulder, he had the elbow. I watched the Georgia tape in which Will Levis and Kentucky only scored 6 points. And I thought when I turned that tape on, and I only did it because somebody texted into the show and said before the draft that Anthony Richardson, who was my preferred quarterback, that Anthony Richardson was horrible against Georgia. And I didn't really have an answer to that. So I decided I'm going to go and watch the Florida-Georgia tape. And I watched the Florida-Georgia tape, and I came out of that, and I was like, oh, my God, I love this Anthony Richardson even more. But then I thought it was only fair to watch the Georgia tape of Hendon Hooker and of Will Levis. And so I did. And Kentucky only scored 6 points. But I came out of that and I thought, man, this kid, he battled. Like, he battled in that Georgia game. He kept Kentucky in it. He made 2 huge, massive mistakes. One was a physical mistake, throwing the ball over the running back, out of the backfield late in the first half. If they complete the pass, it's a first down, and if they complete the pass for the first down, Georgia doesn't get the ball back. Instead, they have to punt. Georgia scores a touchdown before the half. that kind of swung the game a little bit. And then he tried to fire a ball in there into the hole, and the safety was waiting on it, intercepted it down in the red zone. Can't have that. But I walked out of that saying he gave them a chance. But in that game, he played with a bad shoulder and a bad toe, and he had to come out for a play that was a very crucial play in the red zone because he was diving for a first down and he injured the toe. He's got to take care of himself. He cannot take the pops that he has taken in the past. Now, the Titans have to do their part, and they have to go get a better offensive line and no more experimenting. I would love to know if we were having an honest conversation with Ryan Tannehill. And we all know that Ryan Tannehill probably thinks that the Titans screwed him on the A.J. Brown trade, and that's probably because they did. But if we were sitting down with Ryan Tannehill having an honest discussion, and we said to Ryan, what did you think of the offensive lines that they got you the last couple of years? What do you think he'd say? But the Titans last year completely half-assed it. Brunskill's a backup. Brewer's a backup. Dillard's terrible. You can't have that. So it looks like they're moving in the right direction by going and getting Bill Callahan because, okay, now you got a real offensive line coach and not some Scarbini with no experience from low-level college, but, I mean, a real offensive line coach, maybe the best line coach in the NFL. Got to get him some players. But Levis has to be smarter now. When it comes to, the thing I'm proud of is when I flipped on the tape, I did not make the same mistake twice. Good. But listen to these guys that have won MVPs before. Warren Moon is in the Hall of Fame. Rich Gannon has been to the Super Bowl. They watch you play and they say, son, you've got to protect yourself. Because if Levis can't stay healthy this year, and I think we can attribute the injuries this season to the line, just like they kind of attribute the Kentucky injuries to the line. But if he can say, but if we can attribute those injuries to, sorry, these guys are acting like a-holes in front of the set, just knocked stuff over anyways. But if we can attribute all of that to the offensive line one year, if it happens again, we can't do the same. And so, I mean, he's got to do his best and take care of himself. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game.
there has to be consequences for your behavior. If you're not going to protect the football, you're not going to play in Tennessee. That's simple. I mean, once he understands the significance of taking care of the football better and not making those reckless decisions, those poor decisions. Sometimes good players have this innate confidence in their ability to make a big play. And sometimes the best play, the only play, Jared, is throw the ball away, live for another down. I think, he has to learn that. The other thing is about protecting himself. He's a bigger guy. Feels like he can run with the football a little bit. He has to understand that the guys on the other side are trained assassins. Their job is to knock you out of games. And so, your best ability is your availability. He has to learn to protect himself, learn not to take the unnecessary hits. There's a whole coaching developmental thing I do on the quarterbacks in terms of, watch a guy like Russell Wilson slide. He's one of the best in the business. Watch a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes not take the unnecessary hits. Watch a quarterback like Josh Allen and don't do what he does. Leaping piles and turning back in when he gets outside the numbers to try and put his shoulder down and blow up a safety or a linebacker. That eventually will catch up to you. You won't make it through a regular season. So he has to learn to do a better job.
That was Rich Gannon talking about Levis. And again, it's easy to say, hey, just don't fight through every play. But when I see that the Titans are hiring a new offensive coordinator, Nick Holes, I don't know anything about him, and neither does anybody else. The passing game coordinator of the Jags, what does that mean? What does that not? I don't know. And then Bo Hardigree, who was the interim offensive coordinator for the Raiders and called the plays after Josh McDaniels got fired. He was the quarterback's coach in New England for Mac Jones's rookie year. But again, this is all Brian Callahan's offense, and Brian Callahan's going to be coaching the quarterbacks, and Brian Callahan is going to be calling the plays. But whatever it is, they got to tell Levis, dude, you cannot get hurt. Because if you get hurt, all of a sudden, you become injury prone. And it is like Field Yates said on our show yesterday. Teams are more willing to cut bait with a second-round quarterback than they are with the pomp and circumstance of the first-round quarterback. Now, that made me think about Mariota and how the Titans, it was like, nope, not interested in quarterbacks because they got Mariota. They're on their way. They're good. And it's like, well, are you sure? But that's all hindsight anyways. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris Fowler, the voice of college football, will sit down with us in less than 10 minutes. And Javon Kearse will join us at the top of next hour. So we are loaded from Radio Row. One texter into the text line says, yes, Jared, I agree with TD that we should all be holding out hope for Treylon Burks in a new system with new coaching. Do you agree? No. Now, I don't think TD's wrong in saying that there's a chance that Treylon Burks turns it around, and I would, the money's already paid anyways, and Burks has real talent. But just like we're talking about Levis when it comes to taking care of himself and not getting hurt, I kind of feel the same way when it comes to if Levis, if Burks is really going to make it. Because last year, he had spent all off-season training. He was so dedicated. He was at all of the OTAs. He was working with Tannehill. He had a great relationship. He was doing well in training camp. I was very excited for Treylon Burks' season, and then, bam, the knee injury in Minnesota. And I remember that day saying it's taking everything in me not to just come on the radio and say cancel the season because Treylon Burks is hurt. And so that's how angry I got, and that's how much I thought he was going to matter. And so then he finds a way to work himself back, and then he drops the passes in the New Orleans game, in the Cleveland game, and then he gets hurt again, and so he's out even longer, and then he drops some more passes, and then and it's like, maybe you're just not going to make it. And now I wouldn't say that means it's a done deal. He'd be on the team. He would have the ability to play his way, into a big role. But I don't look at the team when saying, okay, what holes do the Titans have? I don't look at them and say, well, they don't have a hole at receiver because they've got Burks. And I can't go into the offseason feeling that way. I just can't do it. One texter into the text line on Levis says, Do you think that adding a player like Brock Bowers, boy, a lot of you want to talk about Brock Bowers, do you think adding a player like Brock Bowers could make or break Will Levis? I do believe this, and I talked about this when Frank Wycheck passed away, and that is that I think tight ends are great for young quarterbacks. Now, Bowers is a little different because we're talking about a premium pick, and I also think that left tackles are great for young quarterbacks. But I do think that the tight end is kind of that safety net. They like throwing the ball to the tight end, and they just kind of wear out the tight end for the first 4 or 5 years, and then maybe they grow a little bit and they chuck it down the field more to their receivers. Joe Burrow is the exception here. But a lot of these guys, I mean, Lamar Jackson has made a career out of throwing the ball to Mark Andrews. Obviously, Mahomes has Travis Kelce. We know Brock Purdy likes to throw to his tight end. By the way, Ian, I have a new opinion on Brock Purdy.
Oh?
Well, you know how, like, half of America either hates Brock Purdy and thinks he's a bum, who's just all about the circumstance of playing in Shanahan's offense and having all these receivers and having this great defense, and that he's a passenger and not a driver, and then the other half is like, he's in the Super Bowl. He never loses. What else could you ask for?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's, like, in between. Like, I certainly don't think he's Mahomes or Allen or Burrow or any of those kind of players. I probably would rather have Kirk Cousins than him if I had to win this game on Sunday. But he's, for a second-year quarterback, I think he's doing well. I think this argument everybody has with him, that's how I feel about Tua. Like, that is how I feel about Tua. Where Tua throws for 18 trillion yards, and it's like, Jared, look at how many yards Tua threw for last week in this 1 o'clock game against the Jacksonville Jaguars that nobody across the country watched. And I'm like, of course he did. He has Tyreek Hill. He has Jalen Waddle. He has a tight end. Like, he's got everything. He's got the system. And then, I got Solomon Wilcots telling me that, well, Tyreek's not throwing the ball to himself. And I'm like, Solly, I could throw the ball to Tyreek, and that's the problem with Tua. So I think Purdy is better than what I think Tua is, but my bone is not with the Purdy argument. My bone is with the Tua argument. Graham says the Titans from the beginning have always found great linemen, but why Munchak, Matthews, Roos, etc. Munchak never played for the Titans, by the way. This team has always been built run first and with a strong line and passing second. This is one of the first head coaches the Titans have had that is so offensively focused. So being run first focused with a great line will open up play for the wide receivers, even if they are a third-round talent who will look like first-rounders. Well, the Titans don't have a third-round pick, but I do think that we're a little over our skis when we sit there and we say that the Titans have never had a pass-first quarterback or a pass-first coach. You guys seem to forget Ken Wisenhunt as the coach of the Titans. I also think, too, like the identity of the Titans has always been physical and to pound the ball, but at the end of the first era Titans, it was a passing Steve McNair team over a running Eddie George team. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones, but Chris Fowler, the voice of college football, is also calling the Super Bowl for people in Australia, New Zealand, and on cruise ships for ESPN. He will join us next right here, Radio Row at Super Bowl 58, Stillman and Company. Twice daily, speaking of international, twice daily has your chance to win a dream trip to Italy. That's right. It's very easy. All you have to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program and purchase a made-to-order Italian sub, and you'll be entered in the Twice Daily Sweepstakes to win an Italian trip of a lifetime. Every sub purchase is a chance to win, or place an Italian sub mobile order for double entries. Visit Twice Daily today for the chance to win a dream trip to experience this breathtaking, beautiful, and rich history of Italy. Go to twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info. Download the Twice Daily app and join that rewards program today. Twice daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company live from Radio Row here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are joined by the voice of college football. That's right. And not only the voice of college football, but Chris Fowler will be doing the Super Bowl in, Australia, New Zealand, and cruise ships. It's got to be kind of cool.
I could do 49ers and Chiefs in a whole bad Australian accent for 3 hours and really annoy the people down under. No, it's a cool thing.
That's actually pretty good.
It's not bad. I've spent a lot of time in Australia covering tennis.
Of
I
course.
just got back, actually. So I've watched a lot of Super Bowls, actually, outside the country with fans who are fired up. And I've seen the American game and the NFL specifically grow in popularity and the knowledge level come way up. So they're very excited. When the Niners punt and Wisniewski comes out there, Australia will come to a standstill. So they're going to be rooting for Chiefs to get third down stops. But they do send punters, and they take over college football, and they're beginning to populate the NFL. So that's their perspective. But yeah, it's the Super Bowl. It's fun. I've never done this before. Got a chance to call 6 NFL games this year, so it's neat to pay it off here.
So yesterday, when we're here at the Super Bowl, it's we're stuck in this bubble of just football, NFL, Chiefs. I saw the headline that Nick Saban's going to game day.
Yeah.
And it made me sad. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it hit me when I saw that headline that Nick Saban is truly no longer coaching in the SEC. Chris, I don't know what a world in the Southeastern Conference is going to look like without Nick Saban. What do you see?
You mean you don't remember the Gene Stallings, the Shula, the brief Mike Price era? That's before your time. No, look, that's the question. You've got him stepping out. You got Belichick leaving. Mm-hmm. So you got these two seismic shifts with the greatest, most accomplished coaches at each level of that sport being replaced, and there's no replacing them. The rivals of Alabama smell blood in the water.
Oh, they almost had a parade, I think, in Knoxville the day that Nick Saban decided to step
So they've been
down.
waiting for this day. They've been waiting for Bama to be vulnerable. Now we'll see if they are. I happen to think that Kalen DeBoer is a really, really good coach. We'll see, what success redefined looks like down there. But look, Nick is going to do great on game day. We've talked about this for a long time. I've covered Alabama for years and have appreciated the respect that Saban has shown for what we do on the TV side and specifically let our guys in and watch games. And so he's a brilliant analyst and has a side of him that people will not have seen. Very funny guy. I don't know if he's going to put on headgear or what he's going to do at the end of the show, but he'll do a great job, and people will stop and want to care what he has to say and listen to it.
Did you get a sense, because you've called his games all throughout the season, and of course you called the Rose Bowl. Did you get a sense that this was coming, or were you as shocked as the rest of us when we see the headline, Nick Saban stepping down at Alabama?
The finality of it hits you, right, like you're talking about.
Sure.
Did not surprise me that as much as you might think, because I know that he's been contemplating this for a while. And then we did the game, and Miller will get stopped on the goal line, and Michigan wins. And amidst all the celebration shots, there was a cutaway shot of Nick taking the headset off, just kind of dropping it. And there was a look in his eye and his face that made me pause and notice that. And it's not our job to speculate about that. We're celebrating Michigan's win. That's what our job is, to document. But Kirk and I had talked about it afterwards, and it was just a different kind of look. Like, did something hit him in that moment? Like, this is it. I'm walking off this field, and I'll never walk back on as a college football coach. And it was not the way you want to go out. You want to go out on top if you're him, because he's spent a career being on top of the sport. But I think that the reasons he gave publicly are the reasons that are authentic for him. He's sick of the BS. He doesn't like the direction the sport's going. Mm-hmm. It's time to step away, and it's been a great run.
What you just said made me sad, thinking about that last shot that I didn't see. You're calling the game and just thinking about that being it for Nick Saban. Chris, I do wonder this. Has Kirby Smart
No one listening, by the way, shares your sentiment. Well, no one in Tennessee is sad that he's gone.
Nashville's a little different, and I'm sure you see that Nashville's one of the top college football markets in America.
Yeah, but Nashville's got people from everywhere.
Yes.
Most of them are not Alabama people.
So here's what it is in Nashville.
Excited.
It's I think like it's half Tennessee fans, and Tennessee fans can get a little out there sometimes. And
Can
then
they? I'd never heard that.
Or you've experienced it firsthand. And it's half people who hate Tennessee. And Tennessee's the only school in the SEC where every other school in the SEC hates Tennessee.
No, come on, man.
Yes, think about it. Nobody, like South Carolina doesn't hate Alabama, right? Like,
I don't know. I can't answer for other people. I mean, I do think that the more successful you are, the more disliked you are by the rival schools, and that's more true in the SEC than anywhere.
But I don't think like Mississippi State hates Georgia. But I know you talk to Mississippi State fans, they hate Tennessee.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I guess they hate Ole Miss. I think they don't like Alabama because Starkville's just down the road from Tuscaloosa, as you know, and they've lived in that giant shadow. And they've been kicked around in the SEC West for a long time.
But the whole point I'm just making is that Tennessee's the one school that is disliked by every single
I don't buy
fan
it.
base
I don't.
in the,
You
in
know
the
better
SEC.
than me, but I don't buy that. Look, people are starting to dislike Georgia. The more you win, the more dominant you are, the more disliked you are. Period. That happens in pro sports as well, as you know. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to have a persecution complex, and everybody hates Tennessee.
They have that.
Come on.
Speaking of, do you think that the Josh Heupel rise at Tennessee, which I grew up a Vanderbilt fan, and what that means is...
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I'm so sorry.
So, how people,
I can't imagine the scarring that you have from growing up a Vanderbilt
Well,
fan.
it wasn't so much watching Vanderbilt as much as it was we would watch Tennessee every week and root against Tennessee. Like my daddy's an Auburn fan and my granddaddy, we'd watch the games together. It's like my dad and I would watch Tennessee every week and we'd root for Arkansas or LSU or Florida or whoever. And so I say this because after all those years where Tennessee was bad, I said to my dad, I'm like, this was fun at the beginning when they got humiliated. Now it's just depressing because it's time for them to be good again. And now it looks like they've got a coach where they are good again. What do you make of Heupel and the rise of Tennessee, and do you think that that's here to stay?
No, I think he's done a remarkable job. I mean, it's all built around his offense and his play calling and the ability to attract players that want to be a part of that and play a style of a play that's really, really uncomfortable for opponents. Now, I think that as the world catches to tempo offenses, and we've already seen teams in college defend tempo better, it'll evolve into being more than that. But the recruiting power that you have, the resources at Tennessee, everything you've got to sell in that program, there's no reason Tennessee shouldn't be great all the time. And Vols fans are nodding their head at that. And I think they'll continue to be really good. I think that you're bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. The SEC is going to be one of the two mega conferences in college football. Everything else outside of that, it's not going to be terribly relevant. And so you're in the deepest end of the pool. And it's never going to be easy, right? But it's not supposed to be.
Sure.
I think that, well, listen, as a Vanderbilt fan, I'll just say this. At the end of the day.
Well, I'm a Louisville fan now. I went to Louisville. I don't have the pain of
But whatever happens
Vanderbilt.
with Vanderbilt, at least you can say, I get to go back to Nashville. Right? Which blows out of the water every other stop in the SEC. Austin coming on board now gives Nashville a run for its money. But I love Nashville. And, it comes to Nashville, not teams, I get it, but Nashville versus any other Ville in the SEC or any other town in the SEC, clear win. Clear win.
Chris Fowler's with us. I do wonder this as far as like college football, this new TV deal with the SEC and ESPN. What does that mean for you guys? Does that mean that whatever the best SEC game is, it's going to be the primetime game with you and Kirk? Or does that mean that you guys are going to be doing that 3:30 game on ABC maybe that'll be the SEC? Because I know the SEC loves that window. How's that? Do you have any idea how this is going to work?
As some in that part of the world would say, we're fixing to find out. Now, I have an idea, but I don't think a lot of those choices have been made. We're obviously really excited to be able to do the biggest SEC games every week. We've called some pretty big SEC games over the years when CBS hasn't picked that game, and obviously called a lot of SEC teams in the playoff.
Sure.
But to be able to go there and week in, week out have a great matchup will be fun. I think we want to have the right and the ability to do other games out there. I haven't thought that much about it. I speak only for myself and not for the company or for Kirk or anybody else. I've enjoyed being able to do games from different conferences. To be honest with you, it's a little heartbreaking for those of us that loved going to Ann Arbor and Columbus and Happy Valley for a whiteout to not be able to do that.
Yeah.
In the same way that it breaks CBS's hearts not to be able to go to the SEC. Fox can't come in and do a game in Knoxville or Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge or Athens, right? They just can't.
Yep.
So they don't have that experience, Gus and Joel and those guys. So we have the ability to do that every week. I like bouncing a little bit. I don't know what the answer is. I think we'll call a mix of games in the afternoon and in prime time, and we'll see how it works out. But I know for sure that the schedule will provide us with good options every week because the conference is so deep.
What do you make of this advisory with the SEC and the Big Ten? It does feel like, and I hate this, but it does kind of, because, again, I'm a Louisville fan, and I like the ACC, and I like the fact that we're in the ACC, but I do see, like, this kind of, there's really two mountains here. There's the SEC and ESPN, ABC, and then there's the Big Ten and Fox, and it does kind of feel like this advisory committee means something.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's been tracking toward that for a while, and then the conferences really began aggressively pursuing teams. If you told me, 5 years ago the Big Ten's going to be 18 teams, and there's going to be 4 teams from the West Coast, I'd have said maybe, but I wouldn't have put money on it, right? I mean, here we are, and I don't
Stanford
think
in the ACC.
A little weird. Not going to lie, a little weird. I think that, look, I don't want to do a long conversation about the Pac-12 breaking up. But Your audience is going to be bored by that. It was a little heartbreaking to see for those of us that respected that league and covered it for 30-some years. Where we're going, I think, is 2 conferences. That's why you're seeing FSU try to position itself to get out of the ACC, frankly. I think it's a shame because I think the ACC right now is still a pretty strong, deep conference, and there contains a lot of programs that people are interested in. But or at least a handful of programs people are interested in nationally. But the power of the dollar is going to win the day, man. As you know, it already is.
Sure.
It's going to continue. When you try to beat the NFL at its own game, it's hard. I mean, we're sitting here look at this place. I mean, look what the Super Bowl is. Look what the NFL is. It's bulletproof. It transcends. Mm-hmm. So for college, as not the highest level of football, trying to create a model which looks a lot like the NFL.
Yeah.
Right? 12 teams with a bunch of games of playoff importance down the stretch.
Wild
That's pretty
cards,
exciting, man. Yeah, but I mean, when people begin to process the 12-team bracket, like nobody really – inclusion is an awesome reason to expand, right? I mean, that's the best reason to expand.
Sure.
Then you start to game it out in the way that people never really imagined what NIL would become, what the portal would become. Players having freedom to move, awesome, sounds great. My coach bolted, I want to as well. Okay, but we never really imagined the kind of roster fluidity, roster rating, tampering that we're seeing. Players sharing in the revenues. Good. About damn time. Overdue. I applaud that. They've been underappreciated and undercompensated for a long time.
Sure.
But is this what you want? Is this kind of unregulated, unrestricted free agency with no salary cap, by the way, based just whatever your collective can pony up based on your TV dollars and the deep pockets of your donors. Other than that, there is no salary cap, and it's $365, man.
And isn't it fair to say when we see Saban and Coach K and Roy Williams and Jay Wright and all these coaches that are still on their A game, and Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL?
How about Jeff Hafley?
Leaves Boston College,
leaves a head coaching
to be a
job
DC.
Now, I get it. It's the NFL coordinator, and Boston College is a good job that he connected with, but he's sitting there thinking, like, can I win at BC? Can I get where I want to go at Boston College? It's a massive uphill fight. You know what it's like to be at Louisville. You can do really well. You can find a path into the playoff by winning the ACC. I mean, but even that for BC is an uphill match. So you're going to see, and by the way, a lot of coaches are sick of the BS. You think Saban's the only one that looks at this and goes, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I wanted to do since I was 21 years old, get into coaching. So having to re-recruit your roster every week, making sure, are we good? We good? We good? And even when they say we're good, somebody drops a bag tomorrow and you're not good. He's out. So that's the reality of the sport. And more coaches, I think, are going to look to the NFL as a more stable more palatable situation. I mean, that's just where we are. I mean, not that college football is going to have no one to coach. Of course, there'll be guys who love it and want to stay and are willing to put up with it in the way that Lane Kiffin might embrace what's going on at Ole Miss. Heupel might fully understand what has to happen.
Well, and I think Jeff Brom at Louisville has embraced that, and that's good, but not everybody wants to do that.
Well, here comes Kalen DeBoer. Welcome to the SEC, man. Welcome to the SEC, where everybody is going to raid your roster on a daily basis. And you have to fight off people. He goes from Fresno to Washington and has to re-recruit all those guys that helped get him to the championship game. Penix and Adunze and McMillan. I mean, that entire roster, he had to re-recruit them. And it was an uphill battle to get them to stay at Washington, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you go to Alabama, people in the South maybe don't know who he is or how great a coach he is.
Even though he's never lost anywhere. the guy's record, whether it's NAIA or –
No, he's a phenomenal coach.
Unbelievable.
And that's what you're hoping he can continue down there at the deepest end of the pool. But trying to get to the starting gate is going to be a battle because, you already see – and every time – a Bama 4 or 5-star flips, it's national news. Every time they lose a guy in the portal. Now, what you haven't seen yet is their power to use the spring portal window to bring in serious talent to plug in every hole in their roster, and they're very sharp. That staff is very, very sharp at talent evaluation, at plugging guys in, and doing it in the way that Mike Norvell did at Florida State. Mm-hmm. You've got to win the portal to win now. You just cannot afford to sit it out like some teams have tried to do. Mm-hmm. Michigan is now going to have to jump in and embrace it because otherwise competing against Ohio State over the long haul is really, really hard to do. Calling the championship game was kind of cool. See all these dudes who played 4 years, 5 years, 6 years of college football, and 5 of them at Michigan. That was amazing. I don't know that it's sustainable anymore, if I'm being honest.
I want your thoughts on Will Levis because you called Kentucky games when he was in college, the Tennessee game, where they really didn't have much of a chance in that game early on.
They had a 0.1% chance of beating the Dolphins.
And I was talking about the Tennessee-Kentucky game 2 years ago.
I thought you were about the Titans.
Now I'm talking about the Titans-Dolphins game, because you did call that game and that miraculous comeback. And not only that, as I was watching the game, I was like, I knew the game was over, but then they, hit one big play and they're right back in it, and all of a sudden, what do you think of Levis?
I like Will. I saw Will at Penn State throw the ball, and you're wowed when the first time you see him on a football field doing the things quarterbacks do because, all of those skills, as all Titans fans know, and Kentucky fans. You can't find a tougher guy. Teammates gravitate toward him. He's a magnetic personality. We were told by Vrabel and everybody. I saw that in college as well. But so much goes into it. Fit. Can you plug him into any roster, no matter how limited the playmakers are around him and the pass protection, and win? I don't know. I pull for him because I like the guy. His toughness is off the charts, and I think you should not cash out or give up on him at all if you're a Titans fan. But I think that it's so hard to do that job. Don't ever take for granted when you watch these games on Sunday. This guy is garbage. He's a bum. You know how hard it is to do that job? How many few humans on the planet can play NFL football at a high level?
And that's why they pay him so much.
Excuse me. People don't think Purdy can do the job well.
Right.
And he's got his team here, and his stats are off the charts, and they still doubt him. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, really, really hard job to do consistently well for a long period of time. I think he can win with Levis, though, if you're asking me. So,
Chris, thank you so much
pleasure,
for stopping
guys.
by, man.
Hi to Nashville.
And they love you, too, there as well. Chris Fowler with us, Stillman and Company. We roll along 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The Brian
Stillman and Company, we are live here, Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. And, Ian, I want your honest opinion on this.
Okay.
Was that Chris Fowler interview your favorite interview so far?
It was up there. I don't know if it was my favorite, just because, I like college football, but, it's not my favorite. But he was very good.
I will say this about Chris Fowler. So he came down here, and there were a couple that he was supposed to do, and we were not one of the ones he was supposed to do. And the guy at ESPN, who I've known for a long time, said, went to Chris and said, hey, do you want to do Nashville? And he was like, Nashville? Yes, I am doing Nashville. And so I figured we'd have like 5 or 6 minutes because they just added him to the schedule. And, I mean, he could have gone on even longer than that. I was the one that was like, hey, man, we gotta wrap this one up. But, I mean, that was one of my favorites right there doing him, college football. And I do stand by what I said. It made me sad when I saw that Nick Saban was going to game day.
Yeah, interesting nugget from him there, huh? About Saban.
About the last shot?
Yeah.
Maybe that's like the poetic mind that those guys have, that they're so locked in when they're calling a game that they
Can
see
just
the
see
camera
it
shot.
in real time.
And they're like, wow, this is the end of an era. Because I was thinking, like, when I asked the question, I figured he was going to be like, yeah, Saban had kind of told us off to the side, like, hey, guys, like, this is the last hurrah for me. Don't say anything, but I've been leaning that way. And maybe Saban did tell him that, and he's just not telling us that Saban told him that. But the way that they said no, the way he took his headset off, we just knew there was something there. I'm like, damn. And it bums me out. It bums me out thinking about a life without Nick Saban in the Southeastern Conference. And I know that they did used to play college football before I was alive, before Nick Saban was in the SEC, or even when I was young and I didn't watch college football. But it's not the same without Nick Saban. Kirby's going to have to be like the new Nick Saban there. But again, not taking anything away from Gannon or Warren Moon or Mad Dog, although Mad Dog's definitely up there. Not to take anything away from those guys, but this one might have been my favorite of the trip so far. Javon Curse will join us coming up next, the Freak. His thoughts on the Titans, where they're at, the quarterback, defense. We're going to talk some defense with the Freak. We'll do that coming up next. Stillman and Company, we are live from Radio Row here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And, of course, let's talk about Window Nation. They're online at windownation.com. Look, it is getting to be the spring, and spring is coming before you know it. It's winter right now, but it's going to be spring. And when it's the spring, if you've got bad windows, what's going to happen is that changing of the weather is going to make things even worse. And so a problem that you could fix right now before it's spring and you want your house to look great just gets drug out. Don't let that happen. Let Window Nation take care of all of those windows. Replace them. Save your energy costs for when it gets really, really cold, which I'm sure it will here in the near future because it's Nashville. And one week it's great and the next week it's terrible. So go online right now, windownation.com, and replace your windows and save big with 50% off all window styles. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder thousands have trusted Window Nation. Do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. And our coverage is presented by the Nashville Sheriff. The Nashville Sheriff is hiring correctional officers. Call 615-862-8170 or email kirk.hopkins@nashvillesheriff.gov. We are joined now by the freak. Javon Kearse joins us now, longtime great Titan. Javon Kearse, welcome to the program. Jared Stillman here, 102.5 in Nashville. This show used to be Jared and the GM with the old GM Floyd Reese. And I will tell you.
Okay, my boy. That's my dude.
He was one of your, honestly, of all the picks he made, you might have been one of his favorite picks, period. And so really glad to have you on the program.
Man, thanks for having me on the program. Man, I miss old Floyd, man. We had bunch of good laughs together. He was a good dude, and when he brought me into play, man, I was very thankful.
He actually told me one time you jumped over a gator at practice, and he came and ran to you, and he yelled that if you ever did that again, that he would try to cut you or do something.
He told y'all that. That's messed up, man. That stuff, you got to keep some things in-house. That's something that happened in-house, and I kind of every now and then try to show off my athletic ability, like when I don't need to, and that's one of the times I didn't need to. I could have saved that for a game.
There you go. Javon is joining us for thanks on behalf of Gear Up Tennessee, a partnership with the Tennessee State Department of Health that is focused on helping people stay healthy, which includes staying up to date on their shots. And 24 former Titans and NFL players are supporting the campaign, including Hall of Famers, All Pros, and Pro Bowlers like you.
Yes, we got the whole gang back together. It feels good to be part of a team again. Even though this team right here is going to be life-saving because it's all about taking care of your community and taking care of your kids.
All right, Javon, let's start with this. How concerned are you about how the Titans haven't been very good for the last couple of years?
It's very concerning to me because I'm a Titan. Okay, don't get me wrong. I play for the Eagles and I play for the Titans, but people know me a lot more as being a Titan. So it doesn't look good. But then again, we're not losing real bad. We're not getting beat down. But I definitely would like to see us definitely win those games that we come up close. Like those games that's decided within a touchdown or so. I would definitely love to see us pull those out because it reminds me of back when I was back there in the Titan uniform. I feel like we won 8 out of 10 of those games that was decided within a touchdown or less.
When you go back to that, how much of that and the team belief of winning those games, how much of that was about Steve McNair? And the reason I ask you that is because this franchise has been looking and looking and looking for a new Steve McNair for forever. Ryan Tannehill did a nice enough job, but he wasn't Steve McNair. And now the hope has to be, if the Titans want to play in a game like this in the Super Bowl, that it's going to have to be Will Levis becoming that kind of player. How much of the belief in the team and winning those close games was about the quarterback that you guys had?
It was all about the quarterback. I mean, if you have a good quarterback, the caliber of a Steve McNair, you have a chance to make everyone's job around you that much easier, and that's pretty much what he did. And he even made our job easier on the defensive side of the ball because we knew what he was going to do when he got the ball, and he was going to have the ball for a long time and then give us a little break every now and then, which was very, very much needed. But having a guy like a Steve, those guys only come around so many. They don't come around that often. They don't come around that often at all. And I kind of see where they went with Tannehill, and I kind of saw when they drafted Mariota, what they were looking for as well. But it's only one Steve, so we got to just look forward to get Will Levis going, and he's going to be the new Steve, the new type of quarterback we need. So far, I like what I see, and decision making, the play, the physicality of them. I like all that for our quarterback.
What do you make of Derrick Henry, Javon, and his next step? He's now a free agent for the first time in his career. The Titans didn't franchise tag him, and they can't franchise tag him because they've already tagged him the first time. So he's going to be a free agent. The running back market is not great, but he's still Derrick Henry. He says he wants to win a ring, but the Titans probably still want him back. What do you make of his situation?
It's a unique situation. Like, it's definitely a unique situation. A running back of his caliber, the upside that he still can run the ball. He still does what King Henry does. He still is the king for a reason. On top of that, it's one of those things. It's just a part of the game when you got to be a casualty. But I can see him going to a team if it's not the Titans, and definitely being a good running team.
Well, you won a Super Bowl. I mean, excuse me, you played in a Super Bowl in Philadelphia after you left the Titans. And, leaving, those were different circumstances. I mean, you got paid top of the market money to go to Philadelphia. But the reason I ask this is because Derek's only played for one team. And so if he were to go to another team like the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Bills or somebody like that that is competing, Dallas, would it be worth it for him to play for another team if it were to take maybe a little bit less money but try to chase that Super Bowl towards the end of his career?
It's always worth it. As I stood around and still talk to some of the former guys, we all talk about that part right there. Like, if we would have went somewhere else, like from our team that we had a good time playing on, a good rapport on, we went to another team. It definitely would have had to be a team that has a shot at winning a championship. And I even thought about that, even though I was only 5 years into my career when I left Tennessee and went to Philly. Like, that played a huge part into my decision making as well. To get paid and then to also have a chance at a ring, and I had that shot as soon as I got over there. So that's definitely like something that you want to keep in back of your mind if you haven't gotten there, if you're going to leave your original team.
Javon, what do you think of the relationship? Warren Moon was on yesterday, and he talked about how the Oiler alumni feel like they have a place where they can, really be respected, and they have a home now in the way that Amy has, embraced the Oilers. And I know that they've got the homecomings and all kinds of different events. How do you feel about kind of your relationship with the team?
Oh, I love my relationship with the team. I'm probably back at least 2 or 3 games a season, and I still talk to Amy whenever I see her. Sometimes I got to pop up into her box to talk to her, but and then I talked to the head coach, who was going to be. I talked to Mike Vrabel numerous times, and it's definitely a good relationship that I have. And then all the guys that I played with that I still stay in contact with, as far as like the Zach Pillars and everyone else, like we still talk to each other, as well as like, and then it gives a chance. Like, I feel like we have some every year that's going to bring us back for some type of reunion. And they do also welcome back the Oilers as well. So that we are the Tennessee Oilers, the usual Tennessee Oilers, Titans. That's pretty much like what we are. So I do love the love that they have for Love Your Blue and the Titan Blue.
Javon, do you think it's important for the Titans that are kind of rebuilding? There's not really a lot of rebuilding in the NFL because teams want to win and they want to win right now. But do you think that there is, is there a need for the veteran players that played on this team that had success, like you, like other guys, to be around and just be open and share advice and things like that? Because this team has so many young players on it right now.
Yes, that's definitely like when it's more need for it, when it's a young team. They have a young cast, and as far as like us, some of us guys that came through there before them and put the work in, like we were there, and I feel like we helped like build that whole like fanatic, that whole stuff right there, whatever. Like, I hear every time I talk to a fan, they first thing they remind me is, we remember when you guys remember when you added Steve. I'm like, yeah, those are great memories, but like let's look forward to making some new memories. And then they just want to bring up the old stuff. So I don't mind that, but I do like the fact that the Titans do still have us around. They have some every year, and then we're able to give them something to talk to them like every now and then.
What do you think of Simmons?
I like him, man. Big boy. I would love to line up on the outside of Simmons, man, because ain't nothing stepping up. Everything is going to come outside of me. Yes. No, he's definitely a game changer, and he's a big piece of that puzzle over there.
Javon Curse is with us. How jealous do you get when you watch the Super Bowl? You know, I've been here at Radio Row all week, and I am jealous of the fact that the Titans are not in this game, and it feels like the Titans are so far away from this game. And I just envision in my head, almost fantasize about what it would be like if the Titans were in this game and how much fun it would be on the radio and how much fun it would be back home and all of those things. And so for you, as somebody who played in this game twice, how jealous do you get watching something like this, knowing that your team's not in it?
I do get somewhat jealous. I mean, I don't get jealous, but then again, I'm like, respect to these dudes. They earned it. You know, they deserve it. And I do think about man, I would love to be cheering for one of my teams in there, because I won't be outside of Top Golf right now. I'll probably be out in Las Vegas right now, supporting my squad and probably at every practice and trying to do as much as I can to try to help motivate whoever I need to motivate. So, but I say what now?
Well, go ahead, Javon.
No, what I was going to say, and then when it comes to this specific one here, I might be a little biased because I played for one of the coaching the game. The other team they have the manpower. I feel like they definitely have what it takes to win this game. But the other guy, that big red guy that coached me for the Eagles, man, he's pretty good though. And he has a damn good quarterback too.
Last one for you, Javon Curse with us. Do you regret anything about the two Super Bowls you played in, because both of them were heartbreakers?
They were. I mean, I kind of no. It's no regret. I feel like I did all that I could do. I just wish that if I could go back in both of those games, I guarantee you we would win both of those games if we ran it back, because it just sucks to make it all the way there and to lose it, and then to lose it closely, whatever. Like if you get blown out, then oh well be it. But then you lose it when it's tight, and it's a bunch of storylines with both of those Super Bowls, with Steve, with Eddie, with Kevin Dyson, and then the other Super Bowl I played in with the Eagles, a storyline with T.O. because T.O. wasn't supposed to play in that game, and later on you hear about Donovan in the huddle throwing up and something like that or whatever. So it's like both of those right there were things that I would love to have over again. But anyways, kudos to those guys, and I hope it's a good one.
There you go. Javon Curse is joining us once again on behalf of the Tennessee alumni, the NFL Alumni Association chapter here in Tennessee. For more information,
Gear Up Tennessee.
That's exactly right. The campaign website is NFLAgearup.org/Tennessee. Javon, thank you so much. Enjoy the Super Bowl this week. And next time you're around, we'll catch up.
Let's do it.
He's the freak, Javon Curse, joining us here out on 102.5, 106 through the game. Let me say this about Javon Curse. The last time I saw Javon, I think it was a couple seasons ago, and when we shook hands, and I've only felt this way twice in my life, and they were the two times that I shook Javon Curse's hand, I felt like I was putting my hand in a first baseman's mitt. I mean, that's how big his hands are. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There's one thing about the Titans that we absolutely, positively never talk about. And I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but, well, we don't do it. And so we'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. That's right. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday will be all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. And it says in here, talk about what you love about the Super Bowl and the game and what you feel. Let me just say this. When it comes to the Super Bowl, the one thing that I feel is that I can't bet against Mahomes. Chris Sanders picked San Francisco earlier this week. I think he is crazy. I can't pick against San Francisco. Against Kansas City. I can't do it. I can't pick against Mahomes. He's too good. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
I truly believe this, and I'm not saying this because I'm doing a radio interview with a station based in Nashville, very popular radio show as well, is that the board shapes up well for them. And I'm telling you, there are teams, a slot, maybe 2 slots behind them, maybe 3 slots behind them, where the board does not shape up nearly as nicely. I really believe that. Now, obviously, if the forecast that I had for the first 4 picks goes differently, maybe it does. Like if for some reason those quarterbacks start to slide, then they might be. It might not be as favorable of a spot for Tennessee because obviously I think Will Levis is probably the guy going forward. I guess they could take a quarterback. I'd be surprised by that. Very surprised by that, I should say. But if those wide receivers are off the board and Joe Alt's off the board, it creates a different dynamic. So, but assuming it goes how I've currently forecasted, the board shapes up extremely well for them.
That was Field Yates on our program yesterday from ESPN. And, I mean, we have been talking draft. And after this week, after the Super Bowl's over, it's only going to be more draft talk. It's only going to be more about that 7th pick. Now, as we all know, those other picks are important too. But we know how this works. It's like, no. We want to talk about the big one. We want to talk about the 7th pick, the names that we'll all know. We'll all know about Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu and Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze and Brock Bowers and this one and that one and everybody else. And we won't be talking as much about what's in the 2nd round and the 4th round and the 5th round and the 6th round and all those, which are still important players to the team. But after talking to Javon Curse, I was thinking about this. I actually was thinking about this when Javon was going to come on, and I was like, we never talk about defense with the Titans. We never talk about it. Should we be talking about the defense with the Titans? You know, I'm a little nervous. Now, I don't know anything about Denard Wilson other than he apparently was a very hot commodity according to the Titans after they hired him. That he was a very hot commodity as a defensive coordinator for all these other jobs. But he's never been a defensive coordinator before. Now, I'm not one of these people who says, oh, well, if you've never been a defensive coordinator before, you never called plays before, how could you possibly be a defensive coordinator, or how could you possibly call plays or anything like that? I've never been that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy now. But I do think that the Titans' defense needs some serious rebuilding, too. They got one corner in McCreary. They got one safety in Hooker. They've got Simmons, Landry, and Key. And that's it. So when we talk about this 7th pick, we don't ever talk defense. But should we be talking defense? Or is defense just, hey, just go stockpile a bunch of players in free agency, throw them together, and let Simmons, the guy you pay a boatload of money to, bring back to Nico Autry, and let Simmons and Landry, the guys that you pay a ton of money to, let them carry the defense, and everybody, all the premium resources should just be focused on what's best for the quarterback. And I don't know the answer to that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. One texter says, I'll never forget a Monday night game when I was a kid, and Javon Curse went to a knee to talk to a trainer eye to eye. Javon Curse is huge. I mean, and he looks like he could still play today. Tank Williams, former Titan safety, now working for Yahoo Sports. Tank Williams will join us coming up here. Stillman & Company, we are live from Radio Row, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, we are live at Radio Row, Super Bowl 58, joined now by former Titans safety Tank Williams.
Yes.
You know, we had Javon, now we got you, and I was just talking about, all we ever talk about with the Titans is the quarterback and Derrick Henry and the draft pick and what's best at 7 to do for the quarterback, receiver, or offensive line. I'm like, we never talk about defense. And yet, when you were on the Titans, when you guys were good, it was defense.
Amazing defense.
Those were good defenses with Jim Schwartz. So I want to start here. What do you think of the Titans, where they are right now, somewhat rebuilding, but they're going forward with Levis and a new coach and a new system? What do you think of the state of the Titans?
I think they're in a good place right now. I think that they need a little bit of a change. Seems like things got stale and they lost a little bit of momentum. Even though I love Braves, I was in there in New England with him his last year. My only year and a half there was with Braves in New England. Really good dude, smart dude, understands the game. But I think they lost a little bit of the momentum that they had early in his tenure there. So bringing in Callahan, I really like the approach that they did in Cincinnati when they got Joe Burrow and implemented a system where they were really effective using Joe Mixon, not only in the run but pass game. And I think that fits Tyjae Spears so well. And at the same time, you have to complement Will Levis with some receivers outside, like you alluded to before. This happens to be a deep draft for wide receivers, and so I would imagine that they'll go out and get one, possibly two, in the first 3 or so rounds. And then I think if you do that and continue to run the ball effectively with Tyjae Spears, the offense can continue to round in shape. And obviously you need to improve on the defensive level as well, because they've been prone for giving up some big splash plays in the pass game for a number of years. But I think improving the secondary, continuing to get pressure on the opposing quarterback will help show that up, because you got some dogs in the AFC South right now with the way the Houston Texans and Jacksonville Jaguars are playing right now. Anthony Richardson getting healthy with the Colts. So the Titans need to get right at the right time, but I believe they made a proper step by hiring Callahan.
Now, one name you left out when you were talking about running the football and what they can do on offense was Derrick Henry. And I know he's a free agent. One, I don't know what the market for running backs is going to be.
It's
especially
terrible
for him.
Yeah.
Because he's 30 years old and he doesn't catch the ball out of the backfield. And
Even though he can.
He can, but he's not, a guy like
He's not
Alvin
elusive,
Kamara,
yeah.
right? He's like running a route tree out there.
Yeah.
And Derrick Henry's not. And to that point, I think that there is serious leadership value in Derrick Henry being on the Titans. And I go back to when you guys lost Eddie George. Eddie was not the same running back that he was in his heyday, but it did feel like that leadership drop-off did hurt the team a little bit. So I wonder if with a young core on offense, with a young quarterback, if you want to keep that, steady leader in their tank.
I think ideally you would like to. I just don't understand. I don't know how much the Titans would be willing to pay King Henry. Because this is the thing. He already showed that he's willing to share the backfield with Tyjae Spears. Obviously, they must have a great relationship, that the way that both of those guys function, and actually has success together in the backfield with the Titans this year. And so I think when you look at the way that the New York Giants treated Saquon Barkley, and I feel that even though he gets banged up regularly, he's still one of the most explosive backs that we have in the league right now. And they weren't willing to pay him a long-term contract. I don't see another team out there willing to try to shell that much money for Derrick Henry. I mean, I think he's a phenomenal player. He's been one of the best backs in the league since he's taken over, over the past, 5-6 years, something like that, maybe even longer. But once running backs get a little bit long in the tooth, it's just this bias that the GMs have right now, because they know that they're only one play away of sinking a whole bunch of money and value into a position where a guy just gets a little bit injury prone as they get older, even though King Henry is still playing great ball.
See, I think Derrick Henry thinks right now he's not going to be on the Titans next year because he thinks he's going to go into free agency, and he's making, I think, 10.5 cash right now. So he probably thinks somebody's going to offer him 10 cash or 8 cash or something like that, and he's going to get out there. And I think the money that we may be looking at when it comes to him, like $2 million with incentives to get it to $5 million. And then the Titans, I could see saying, hey, we'll give you $6 million to come back. And now it's like 2 up to 5 versus 6. I take the 6, right?
Honestly, I think in his situation where, he led the league in rushing for a number of years, had a really big contract when he signed it, and look at where he is in his tenure as an NFL player right now, he may be willing to play for 6 or 7 or something like that if the money isn't out there with another team, in order to stay with the Titans, stay in a familiar city, a familiar fan base, a place where he ended up becoming a player that everyone expected him to be in Tennessee, but maybe not everywhere else. Because at one point in time, people were trying to get away from big running backs because they felt like they weren't shifty enough. They couldn't catch the ball out of the backfield, and that they were feeling that the backs of King Henry and Eddie George were becoming dinosaurs in the league. But he proved otherwise, and so I think there is some value there for what he built in Tennessee and what he stands for to try to keep him in that locker room at some point. But understanding that Tyjae Spears is probably going to end up being that lead dog in the future based on what Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor were trying to do with that offense in Cincinnati.
Former Titan safety Tank Williams is with us. Do you think Derrick Henry's a Hall of Famer?
I think so. I think Derrick Henry has been one of the best backs that we've seen in the NFL in recent memory. I know that we have guys like Christian McCaffrey. You know, I'm a Stanford guy, so I appreciate what he's done in the league from a running and pass catching standpoint. But Derrick Henry just being a pure runner, and when everyone knows that he's going to run the ball, yet and still he runs through entire defenses, I think that's something that has just been unprecedented in the league from most of the backs in the league. Like, only Derrick Henry has been able to do that on a consistent basis, the way he just runs through defenses at will. And I think that and the production that he's had consistently over a string of years has earned him a right to be a Hall of Fame or close to it for sure.
So I have a radio topic that's on my head that I think I'm going to do tomorrow, and I've been thinking about it all week since I've been here. Like, Kansas City is not a special franchise. There's nothing special about the city. It's not a large market. They just have the quarterback. Yeah. Like, they have the great quarterback, and they're going to be great for the next 10 years, and it's going to be a dynasty, an era. It's going to be great. Nashville, where do you live now?
I'm in the Bay Area, San Francisco.
Okay, you're in San Francisco. Nashville, what it is now compared to what it was when you played with the Titans.
And it was, yeah.
Not even close. If the Titans had a Patrick Mahomes, if Will Levis develops into a Hall of Fame quarterback, which who knows if he's going to or not, but if he does, what would that do to the city of Nashville by the time his 18-year career would be up?
I can't even imagine, because when I visit Nashville, it seems like every 7-8 years now, and it's crazy to me how much the city has changed. And I was in love with Nashville the first time I stepped into that city when I got drafted in 2002, and each time I ventured back, I love the city more and more, just because, I mean, that vibe that I felt in 2002 still exists. Even though you see taller buildings, there's definitely a lot more going on, a lot more people entering the city on an annual basis. But Nashville is a special place, and like you said, if you can have a Patrick Mahomes just thrive the way he has in Kansas City, but at the same time understand that Patrick Mahomes is one of the special talents that we really haven't seen come across the NFL. I mean, there are only a few rare talents like him, and the production that he's had this early in his career, I mean, he's a special dude.
A man can dream
about
what it might do.
But if you get a player like Patrick Mahomes in Nashville, oh, my goodness. I mean, I already have great things to say about that city. Like, it's already trying to rival Vegas on.
So everybody wants to be a part of a winner. And so if the Titans were one of those teams, because nobody wants to, like, go to Kansas City.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Kansas City fine. It's kind of cold. But nobody is sitting there across the country for the most part saying, you know, it'd be a great place to live. Kansas City.
Right.
That'd be a great place. But everybody says that about Nashville. But you get a winning team that is consistently winning, like a Tom Brady Patriots type team, I think it could
and imagine the stadium, too.
City.
Because the fans are already crazy about the team. So imagine, like, a player like a Patrick Mahomes manning the quarterback position in Nashville. Man, that in the new stadium, too, that stadium would be full. It would be electric. You know what it would be like? Detroit Lions playoff game.
Yeah.
That surprised me, because when I played in Detroit when I was with the Minnesota Vikings, I never experienced that in Detroit because they were always trash. But to see the way that the fans lit up that stadium for those two playoff games, unbelievable, man. I can imagine Nashville being something similar because I've experienced it. I remember playing in the Monday Night Football game. I think it was against the New England Patriots. And Javon had hurt his foot or something like that. And he had been out for like maybe a month or so. And that was his first game back. And they announced him last as the defense came onto the field. and it felt like the fans were just hanging out the stadium. That was the loudest I've ever heard Titan Stadium. And we went out there and we beat the New England Patriots. And I feel like that fan base can be like that on a consistent basis if you have a Patrick Mahomes type player out there in a winning program.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like how big it would make the city. Just more people would move to it. More people.
That's going to happen
would wanna-
regardless. I got people from the city I live in now that have moved to Nashville. Like, that's going to continue whether the team is good or not.
When you lived in Nashville, did you buy or rent?
I actually bought a home out in Brentwood.
How much you pay for it?
Oh, it was probably like in the twos, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that house is probably now like $1.3 million.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Tank Williams, thank you so much for stopping by, former Titan safety. He's all over the place, Bally Sports, BetMGM. Who all are you with?
Yeah, all of the above.
All of the
and
above.
You can find me on social media on X, formerly known as Twitter, at TankWilliams13. Same handle on IG, and you can look me up on YouTube where I do some long-form content at TankWilliams13 as well.
He's the man. Our conversation with Titans quarterback Will Levis, that's next. Stillman and Company live from Radio Row 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company live from Radio Row here at Super Bowl 58. Tomorrow will be our final day at the Super Bowl, which we are very, very excited about. But I do want to say that right now we've had a lot of great highlights, a lot of great guests. Yesterday, Will Levis was participating in a ping pong tournament on behalf of Procter & Gamble against Trevor Lawrence, Saquon Barkley. It actually ended up being, in the end, a somewhat contentious final battle between Trenton Taylor of the Bills and Dustin Hopkins of the Browns. Hopkins won, by the way, Nashville guy, lives in Nashville. He ended up winning, and he and his wife are about to have a baby. He's a good man, and so we wish them nothing but the best. But I was able to catch up with Titans quarterback Will Levis yesterday, and here's what he said. So let's start here. Take me through kind of what it's been like for the last year of the draft, the process, what happened with the draft, going to the Titans, becoming the starter, the injuries. What did that feel like as you reflect back on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely times where, especially on that draft night, where there were moments where, I kind of was thinking to myself, like, why is this all happening to me? Why? But, at the end of the day, I realized that everything that did happen to me was for a reason, and that I ended up where I needed to be. And, the season, it was a weird season in terms of when I did get the opportunity to play and, stepping in, like, kind of in that midway point of the season and figuring it out and adjusting as the year goes on. But, I'm proud of myself and how I handled it, and just looking forward to building on it and improving for next year.
What was it like mentally going from a third-string rookie quarterback to a starting NFL quarterback?
I think that I did a good job before I became the starter of kind of putting myself in the mentality of that I was the starter, even though I wasn't. I think that's important for guys, to make sure that their preparation and everything would equal what their preparation would be if they were in a bigger role, and so that when they do get the role that they're ready. So, I mean, I was proud of how I handled myself before then and how I prepared, and I feel like it set me up for more success.
Take me through your feelings there at the end of the season. You're getting peppered about all the questions about Mike Vrabel's job. You're answering them. The Titans end up making a change. Just what were those feelings like as that all played out, and maybe the conversations you had with them, and then where you ended up here right now?
Yeah, it's weird. You have no say as a player. You really don't know. A lot of the times you're figuring stuff out on social media before you hear from anybody else. So it's tough, and to know that you really have no say and you really have no idea how things are going, and when the decision was made, obviously, there's mixed feelings about it all, but we know that our ownership and our organization has a plan for us going forward, and we're buying in to what they're doing, and I'm pumped about the new staff, and once we iron all the rest of the staff out, I'm excited to get to know everybody and get to work.
What'd you make of the fact that when Amy did announce to the fans why she made the move she made, she brought up the things to be positive about, and she said, we've got a young quarterback. And it almost felt like that was kind of a commitment from the owner to the fans of, hey, this is my quarterback right here. What did you make of that?
I mean, it means the world. It gives me confidence, and it gives me clarity, and her view, in me, and it gives me motivation to just work that much harder so that I can keep that job.
What does the offseason look like for you? I mean, we don't even know who's going to be on the team next year, who's not going to be on the team next year. I get the vibe from you that you're the kind of guy who, when you're bored, you're mad that you're not working at football or whatever. So kind of what's the plan in terms of making sure that instead of training for a draft or anything like that, that you are really focused on getting better for the start of next season?
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. I'm a workaholic. I'm gonna work myself into the ground, but right now, I'm not, and I'm enjoying myself for the first time in a really long time, which has been incredible, and letting my body get back, and and here in a week's time or so, we'll hit the ground running again with training, but it's been a blessing to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit, these past few weeks. But as we figure out what the roster looks like, who there's going to be, I'm going to do whatever I can to get with as many guys as I need to, wherever they may be. I'll be, for the most part, in Nashville, so, getting to learn from the new staff and all that. But, yeah, I mean, do whatever I can as a leader to, get everyone else ready.
What's the conversation's been like with Coach Callahan so far? What's the vibe?
It's been great. I mean, I was only able to briefly talk to him a couple times when he first got in the building, and then I actually spoke with him on the phone today. But he's keeping me in the loop with the hires that we're making and how excited he is about the different people that we have in the building. And I just can't wait to start getting with him in a classroom environment and start hammering down this playbook.
Did the game slow down from you for when you first? I mean, I know the first game was so, you were so good in that first game, but did it slow down in terms of like how fast it went, or the mental processing for you slowed down a little bit as the season went on? And is that something that maybe you feel like as you go into the second year you can take advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. I think that even from the first game, I really did feel like I had a good feel and sense of, the space on the field and where guys were at. And that just only grew as the season went on. And I was able to, put the ball in the right spots for the most part. And obviously some bad throws here and there and decisions that I'd like to get back. But I know that I'm only going to improve with time and with more reps under my belt. The game's just going to become easier and easier to me.
Do you look back at, I get the vibe also that you probably look back at the mistakes and think, oh, if I had hit Traylon Burks on that throw, or oh, if I had looked at this guy in the Pittsburgh game, or oh, this would have. How do you kind of look at that and say, okay, next time that happens, I will make the right decision here?
I think honestly one of my strengths is I don't think watching tape from week to week, like it was rare that I caught myself making the same mistake twice, like 2 weeks in a row or something like that. So I really do like take coaching well, I think, and that I'm able to understand that making a mistake for the first time, like that's going to happen to any player, but it becomes more on you when it happens the second time. So I take pride in that, and but it's important to not beat yourself too up about those plays, because I know that I have the ability to make all the plays that I didn't.
What was it like experiencing the Atlanta game? Because I would like to think I'm pretty confident in myself, but there are still times of doubt, like, oh, can I do this at this level? And then for you playing quarterback in the NFL, it's like the number one job in America, and it's like, can I do this at this level? And then you have the Atlanta game. What was that like?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I always felt confident in myself, just especially through the reps that I was able to get in practice and training camp, that I could do it. But you never know. I mean, sometimes, like, you go out there and it just might not click for you, and I was just glad that it did. And, the coaches set us up for success that game, and guys were out just making plays, and everything just felt like it was working for us. And it was a great game for me to have to give me confidence going forward for the rest of the year.
So I talked to Coach Stoops last year, and I said, I used to do radio in Louisville, and I was talking to Coach Stoops, and I said, Coach, tell me about, like, Will Levis and what everybody, because there's kind of this idea of Will Levis, and then I talked to some other people, and they're like, no, Will Levis is everything. And he goes, it's not about money, it's not about fame, it's about winning. And he gave me this, like, kind of stern look. I'm sure you probably know the look I'm talking about, but he was like, he said that the season that you had in 2022 that he took personally, when you think about that, about how, he's not your coach anymore, he doesn't owe anything to you, you don't owe anything to him. What does that kind of, when you think of that, what does it mean to you?
It means that I felt like I did a good job as a player under him, and that I at least did enough to earn his respect. And, I have all the respect in the world for Coach Stoops, and knowing that he's going to bat for me, I know I'm going to go to bat for him for the rest of my career as well. And, he's a guy who's, he speaks the truth, and he's not going to, BS you in that sense. So, I hope that was a authentic answer from him, but I think that I'd agree with it as well.
So when Brian Callahan got hired, I sat down with him the next day. And I said, when you were in Cincinnati, you guys had the 5th pick in the 21 draft, and there was a big discussion about, do you take the receiver, who's a really, really good receiver, or do you take the tackle, who's a really, really good tackle? And he said it was a really big, discussion they had there, but he talked about how Peyton Manning kind of would prefer the receiver. And he said, I want the premium touchdown scorers over the premium non-touchdown scorers. This team may be looking offensive line, maybe looking receiver, maybe looking. Do you have a premium offensive line or a premium receiver touchdown scoring option in your head that you're like, that's what I want?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you brought that up, because it is a kind of similar situation. But no, I mean, they're the ones in the office that make the decisions on those things, and I'm staying out of it, and I trust that whatever they decide is going to be best for us.
Brock Bowers said today he wants to be a Titan. I asked him what he thought about you, and he said, oh, I played against him in college. He's balling. That earned some brownie points?
No, I mean, he's balling too. He's been incredible to watch these past couple of years, and I hope that he ends up in the spot that's meant to be for him, and if that's Tennessee, then that's awesome.
Well, last one for you. This year, again, a lot has been said about you. A lot has been, thought about you, whether it's positive or negative. But the way that the Tennessee fans kind of embraced, I'm not talking about Vols, but I'm talking about Titans, the way that those fans kind of embraced you there after the Atlanta game, what did you make of that? Did you feel it? Like, what was that like?
I mean, I definitely felt it, and it just makes you want to work harder because, the second that you have a game on the converse side of that one, that they're going to be coming for you, and that's okay, and that's what fans are entitled to do, and I'm just trying to do the best I can to make them proud and to make them happy each and every Sunday, Thursday, or Monday.
Oh, I actually lied. I got one more for you. Any of the games this season that you didn't get, is there one that sticks in your craw that you'd like to have back?
Oh, I'd say Steelers. I mean, that last throw on the end of the game, that Thursday night game, I mean, we should have had that game won, and that would have been a good one to win.
Well, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Titans quarterback Will Levis yesterday after the ping pong event. Stillman and Company, we have a loaded show for you for our finale tomorrow from Radio Row at Super Bowl 58. So we'll see you all at 2.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.